All right, it's showing up there now. Really? Refresh. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So at some point, I think Miguel's going to come in. I don't know if I can record this or not. Well, I kind of wanted to, but I can pull the recording down off of something else. I can pull it off YouTube after I get it there. Yeah. Record the live scene. Yeah, that should work. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Recording's been started, so here we go. I'll see if everything works. If it doesn't, then I'll be laughed at by everyone. Okay. Well, I don't know if anybody's watching the stream, but this is going to be a 2-hour marathon stream, so kind of hang in there, and it'll be pretty casual. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of stuff, be looking at trying to wade through and give people an overview of all the confusion and what things they need to worry about and focus on for streaming, whether they're streaming a church event or a church service or a special concert or whatever they want to do. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be considered, and we'll be looking at Zoom because everybody's using Zoom to do church stuff. We'll be looking at XSplit, which people aren't using but should be, or OBS, which they aren't using but mostly should be. Skype, which they probably should be using in some ways or maybe not, depending on what they want to do. Streaming to platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Twitch and the different options there. So hopefully there's going to be a lot of light bulbs that go on and a lot of overview kind of stuff. You'll go, oh, that makes sense now. Now I know kind of what I need to do and what I need to look forward to putting together to make things work the way I want. So with that, we're going to just kind of go through this. It's the essential streaming guide, how-to guide for church streaming. We're going to cover stuff like how to live stream with XSplit and OBS. Zoom, a lot of people already kind of have an idea what they're doing there, but we'll talk about a little bit of that. Gear, we're going to talk about cameras and capture devices and microphones and computer requirements and data bandwidth requirements and how you test that and stuff. Hookup connections and stuff. We'll talk about integrating Zoom and Skype sessions into XSplit and OBS, which is how you ought to be doing things. We'll be talking about lighting yourself and your team and with and without gear, expensive gear or cheap gear on the cheap gear, do-it-yourself gear. We'll even talk a little bit about green screen stuff. We'll talk about some microphones that are great and some mixers and things like that. We'll talk about some virtual church ideas too, so that'll hopefully be helpful. Some tips and tricks are going to come up along the ways and some things you got to watch out for. Integration of worship bands, like live mixed music, is kind of a thing that I don't know how important it is to a lot of people, but it ought to be really important because it sounds really bad out there a lot of times, and so we kind of want to help that not be the case. And we've got like some special guests, like Chris Slay is going to be on later on to talk about how to mix for a live stream and how to make your band sound good. And we'll talk a little bit about that too, but then he'll kind of give you lots of tips and practical things about how to make that work. Miguel Molina, he's the Director of Developer Relations with XSplit. He'll be on, and he'll be talking about some of the great things that XSplit does that you want to be using and leveraging for your church services. So I think it'll be really cool. And of course, my phone's going off while I'm streaming. So I don't really know what that's about, but we'll find out here and get rid of it. Yeah, it's junk call. I'm going to turn that off. My phone never rings hardly, so I don't really know what the deal is with that. We're going to have an extended Q&A session, and we're going to run some information about how you can run your service from even multiple houses and stuff, which some of you are probably already doing, but we've got some tips and tricks for that. First of all, let's take just a quick look. Don't look too long and hard at this because it's going to make your head explode. It'll all make sense by the time we're done, so we're going to move right along. this is me. I'm Bruce Searle. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm been a pastor and a worship leader, youth pastor for over 30 years. I own a small publishing company where my wife and I publish children's choral music for secular schools, and sometimes church, uses get used. And we've written, I don't know, like 30 worship choruses and a couple of children's musicals. One's a Christmas musical and one's a more of a spring musical. They're both kind of designed for full church interaction participation. So they have a lot of appeal. And the Mouse Christmas musical that we did has been used all over the world. It's really cool. Not cool because we're cool, but cool how well it's been received and how blessed we've been by some of the comments and testimonials people have sent us. They're just really kind of amazing. I'm a vocalist from a long time ago and a professional trombone player years ago. I am a horrible guitar player, and I'm not horrible, but I'm a hack on the guitar, I'm a hack on the drums. But I used to play trombone pretty well, so that's my one musical claim to fame, and I used to sing well. I don't sing a whole lot anymore, but occasionally that happens. So Jennifer and I are composers, playwrights. We compose contemporary worship and children's choral and a smattering of pop and wedding and jazz and stuff like that. I'm an author, actually, published author. Nothing you guys would have ever read. It was a long time ago in a programming journal magazine. And I was counting on the sun not blasting in here, so that's really nice. It just came out. Hopefully it'll go away soon. I used to be a system builder and integrator for computer systems and did a lot of computer system support for years. So I'm fairly technically savvy, which you can't tell by the way the stream's going so far. I run a professional recording studio that I do part-time recording of some YouTube artists. Some of them are quite popular, and have done live sound recording for decades. I'm a professional portrait photographer and videographer, and I record, mix, direct, film, edit, and produce YouTube music videos, mostly with my daughter, who is a really great YouTube singer, or singer, I guess, in general. And then, of course, I live stream MWOnline. You guys don't care about that, but if you like watching first-person shooters, I would check it out, and you can see me on Twitch or YouTube. Now, some of you are watching this on Twitch, and you'll see as we go through, there's some reasons to do that. And some of you might be seeing it because I've reposted. I'm going to repost it later on the Aardvark Hill YouTube channel, and so that might be where you're seeing it. So if you're not watching it live and you're just kind of catching it now, then that's why that's going on that way. Anyway, all of that to say, not that I'm a great guy, although I'm such a great guy, but mainly that I've got a wide range of experience and skills and knowledge, and hopefully can bring some of that together and help you guys. I know a lot of pastors and worship leaders and even the media people, you're kind of overwhelmed with all of the options and all the things you should do or can't do, or how do I do. And this will, I think, give you a whole lot of overview, kind of, that's what I got to do here. A lot of bells and whistles should go off for you. So I'm just hoping to impart some of the knowledge and experience that I've gotten and learned and make it available for you guys. So it's going to be kind of methodical and tedious. Others will be really interesting and stuff. So I know for a lot of people, the feeling is live streaming takes too much time. Live streaming looks so horrible. It sounds horrible, and it's full of problems and headaches. And all of that generally is true, but it doesn't have to be true. And I'm going to help you try to get it so it's not true. One of the first things you want to do in your live streaming, and this is a great illustration of that, is you want to control your lighting. We'll talk about lighting in a little bit, but right now, just take a look at my face and notice how it's gone. Well, part of the reason it's doing that is because I left my camera on auto settings, and normally I wouldn't do that, but I had a specific reason I was doing that, and one of them is to kind of show you this sort of stuff. And because I have two cameras set up to this system right now, and if I switch to the other one, because I'm using low-end webcams, which we'll also talk about, they both feed off of the same settings. Logitech doesn't support individual settings per individual webcam in a multiple stream setup. So this was the best compromise. And at the time, it's been nice and overcast and beautifully perfect. So I lit for that, and then wow, look what happened. So this is why you want to control your lighting, and we'll talk about that. So let's go on here. I did promise that there'd be some free stuff, and now some of the free stuff that I want you to be able to get a hold of is going to be from XSplit, and Miguel will talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit, and so that's coming up, and that's really cool. I want to give you some of our worship songs just because I know you're here wasting your time, hopefully to find something and come away with something that can really help you. Well, this maybe, if nothing else, if everything else is a blowout and a loss, you'll say, oh, well, I really loved a couple of these songs that Bruce gave us for watching him, prattle on about streaming and stuff. If you go to www.aardvarkhill.com/product/watching, or it's watchin-over-me-collection, just like it is here on the screen, and use the checkout code, just add it to your cart and use the checkout code worship freely. That coupon will be good until December 31st, 2020. So you've got time to do it, but I would not wait. I'd go do it right away. These are 10 intimate worship songs that we've found that churches of all sizes have loved to do. Youth have loved them, college, career age, young marrieds, adults, and even older people. Yep, even us older people have loved these songs, and they've worked in small churches and Bible study settings, in women's worship weekend retreats of 600 women, or mega churches of 4,000 people, or 120 person average size church, or 300 size. It doesn't matter. These songs have touched people's lives, and I just want to give them to you. Normally we sell the PDF downloadable songbook arrangements, which have piano scripted out and notated, and all the chords for guitars and bass and stuff, and they have the lead line, and they have some vocal harmony parts. You don't have to use the vocal harmonies. If you want to make up your own vocal harmonies, that's fine. If you want to make up your own, make it more guitar led, that's fine. We just wanted to make them available to you. If you like them, use them. If you don't, great. So enjoy that. I hope they serve you well, as they have for us, and they have for many churches around the world that have used them. So check that out. Here we go now. Let's go to our next thing. Here we go. We're starting right into the presentation, and yeah, we're right on track. So this is the basis for your event streaming setup. Whether you're using Zoom or Skype or Wirecast, OBS or XSplit, this is basically a laptop. It could be a computer, it could be a laptop, and you can pull in, open a Zoom application, and you can basically open a meeting, and you can stream. And you can stream that through Zoom to Facebook, or you can stream it to YouTube, and that's kind of a built-in feature of that. And people all over the world are using Zoom right now, and we won't go into the security issues, which I'm sure are real and they're important, but I know that Zoom is moving quickly to try to take care of that, and by the time you're watching this, some steps have already been taken. I'm sure more will be taken. To me, the issue with Zoom is not the security, because there's ways already to mitigate that risk. The big issue is that the quality of the video and the quality of the audio are pretty much horrible. Now, there are settings you can go in and adjust and customize to make music and contiguous smooth audio prioritized, and you can select HD output, which is really not even, it's minimal HD, it's like 720, and it looks to me it's less than that. But the problem with Zoom is, because they're trying to manage multiple people all connected all at the same time without bogging down your computer, they're crunching everybody's images down to a tiny little postage stamp size of pixels, and then scaling those few pixels up to a larger size. And they're just truncating your sound with over compression and limited frequency response and low data bandwidth data streams. I've actually contacted and asked them what your, hey Zoom, what's your actual data bit rate that you're broadcasting the audio at? And I think they're too busy to talk to me. They haven't answered that question, but I can tell just from years and years of compressing my own audio and preparing it for streaming and preparing it for online shops and stuff like that, that it's got to be in the 56, maybe lower kbits per second range. I'm guessing lower, and it's mono. So that coupled with terrible video quality, it's just not an ideal platform. And I know a lot of people have trouble using it to stream to Facebook, and that's probably Facebook's problem as much as anything else. So the first thing you want to look at, whether you're going to stream to Zoom or anything else, and we're going to talk about the anything else mostly. So from here on out, you can see here we've got Zoom Skype session going to, I'm going to recommend you always hard connect to your internet connection, your internet service provider. If you're trying to stream across your Wi-Fi connection, you're begging for problems. It's almost like opening the door and asking Satan to come into your worship service, because he's there to destroy it. Wi-Fi is not reliable, it's not consistent, it's not fast, and you just don't want to be there if you have a important thing you want to push out. So you want to hard connect with a Cat5 cable, an Ethernet cable, from the back of your computer, the side of your computer, the port of your computer. If you have a laptop, like my daughter has a laptop that's newer and it doesn't have an Ethernet port on the side, so we just got her a UBS to Ethernet with a hub adapter, so she can plug in a webcam and a microphone and something else into that, and an Ethernet jack, and plug it into her computer, and then she gets all the stuff she didn't have. That gives you a stable, faster connection to the internet. So the first thing you want to do when you check is you want to check your bandwidth. You want to make sure that you've got a minimum of 2400 kbits, that's 1000 bits per second. And that will, it's not good, it's not great, it's not enough, but you can use it, and it will support a 720p stream, which is HD technically. It's not full HD, but it's 1/4 of full HD in resolution. It will support a stream of 720p. You'd be better off with a 3500 kb per second. That will support a 1080p 30 frames per second stream that's fairly compressed. It'll be a little artifacty and gnarly, but it'll be passable, and a lot of people will not notice maybe that. But my minimum recommendation is to have 4500 kbs, which will give you a nice quality stream, and ideally a 6000 kbs stream. That's what Twitch actually recommends, is 6000 kbits per second, which will give you a really nice 1080 30 frames per second stream. Now 1080p is, remember, is 1920 pixels across the long side of your frame, the long direction, and it's 1080 pixels vertically. So that's quite a bit of detail, basically. And so you're going to want to shoot for, if you're broadcasting, 1080p is kind of the standard that everybody on the internet uses for YouTube videos that look decent and stuff like that. 720 will work, you can get by with it, but your stream is going to look a lot more level parity with the professional stuff that's out there if you can push out a good, clean 1080p stream. Your ISP data upload speed should be double your broadcast stream speed. What that means is that if you're streaming at 600 kb per second, that's 6 megabits per second. Then you'll want a 10 to 12 gigabits per second. Gets confusing, doesn't it? Upload speed from your ISP. So just to figure, if you've got a 6 megabits per second, you're going to want 12 gigabits per second. And these numbers, if you do the math, that's not exactly correct. But for a rule of thumb, that's going to help you figure it out. If I'm doing a 6K stream, I need more than a 6K or a 6 gigabit bandwidth going up. The way you buy your internet from cable is they give you 60 or 40 or 100 or 150 megabits per or gigabits per second download speed. But they don't give you very much upload speed, so you actually have to test and find out. And you might have to call them and change that, because a lot of times they'll chintz on the upload speed, thinking most people won't ever notice because they're not uploading stuff. Sometimes you have to tell them when you get it set up that you want a larger portion of your bandwidth connecting service to go towards upload speed. So when you go through the speed test, you'll find out what that is, and if you don't have enough, you're gonna have to talk with them and get that taken care of. This is super important because as you're streaming, everything is about your upload speed. It's not about your download speed. So having double gives you enough to kind of get over the peaks and valleys of your internet performance. Basically, you get a lot of bursting of speed and then slowing and then waiting, nothing, and then you'll get a burst again, and you're it's like riding a really choppy waves sea storm or something. So having double the bandwidth gives you some buffer where you can catch up when you're getting behind and things like that. And it gives you a little bandwidth to allow things to come in and out. Like I'm going to be later on having people come in on Skype calls and join me, and I have enough bandwidth to support their high quality Skype call and another high quality Skype call, and have them join me and integrate that into my stream and then send it all out again, both to them and to my streaming service distribution place. So you go to speedtest.net. This is how you do it. You go to speedtest.net and you run the speed test, and it's going to tell you, based on a server that they choose, basically, that's fairly close to you, what your millisecond delay time is, your download speed, and your upload speed. And if that's below what you need, then you need to look at getting either different internet connectivity or changing around what you've got, or a different company altogether. You won't be happy unless you get that problem fixed. You're going to have problems a lot otherwise. So don't try to stream over Wi-Fi to the world. Direct hardwire Ethernet cable to your router or your modem for best performance. If your computer and laptop's fast enough to run XSplit, OBS, to capture a couple cameras and just a couple NDI sources, which we'll talk about, combine and mix all those external audio sources at 1080p, encode and send them to YouTube and record them all locally at the same time. That's the next question. I would recommend more cores, especially important, more even than that. I would have 4 cores as a minimum, but then I would have a good GPU graphics card that has hardware encoding of video and decoding of video features built into it. So like I run a GTX 1080i graphics card, and it just makes everything work. I don't have to worry about it. That's true for video editing too. The GPU on your graphics card is more important actually than the number of cores, but the number of cores certainly is important for video purposes. More megabytes of RAM or gigabytes of RAM are better. Megabytes. I grew up when it was megabytes and bytes of RAM, kbytes. So I recommend 16 gigs of RAM or more. I run 32 on this machine. It's an older machine, but it's a pretty beefy machine. So it does fine. I can game at high res on a large, 3840 by 1600 resolution, ultra wide monitor. I can game at 70 frames per second. I can capture that and then save it to the hard drive at the same time. And I can push that out to a 1080p stream at 30 frames per second and do all of the talking and comms, chat, and everything else, and monitor the stream and go to other websites and play videos back from that. I can do all that on this machine because I have enough RAM, I have a fast enough GPU, and I have enough cores. And I have fast SSD hard drive system as my main swap drive, my system drive, and I've got fast other drives for data and stuff like that. And then the other thing I have is a nice audio interface. You can add those things. If you don't have a computer that has that stuff when you do buy one to do streaming, then keep that in mind. So let's keep going. We're going to talk now about XSplit. So any of you guys who are using Zoom and Skype sessions to stream your services, you are missing the tricks. Here's the deal. OBS, which we'll talk about too, they're the competitors basically. OBS is a free version of called Open Broadcaster software, sorry. And it allows you, and XSplit allows you to turn your computer into a television studio. It gives you all of the features and functions that you would have of a switching board and chroma key overlaying and green screen effects and queuing up and playing different scenes and transferring and smooth transitions and edits. And all of that stuff, it's all done in software on your computers. That's why you need a beefy enough computer to handle it. But most people can probably, if you've got a computer that, or even a laptop that you've purchased in the last couple of years, it will be fast enough to do this for you. OBS normally is like, I think about $400 or $500 for a lifetime license, and it's, you can buy it yearly on a subscription basis. Sometimes they run for like $60 a year. Sometimes they run a get the lifetime license for $279, or right now they might have a sale for $200, which is still great. But as we're going to talk about, or I'll just talk about it now. Right now, as I was talking with XSplit and Miguel and stuff, they said, "Hey, we've just come out with a new thing, partly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm sure. They've just made their software, the premium edition, which has everything in it, free for all nonprofits. So your church can use this expensive software. It's great software for free." And I think that's just amazing. So if you came here for something free, I want you to know I just gave you something free. And I didn't even give it to you. I'm not going to take the credit for giving it to you, but I am going to take the credit for telling you that you can have it for free. And I'm going to give kudos and thanks to XSplit for doing that for nonprofits around the world. I think that's really fantastic. So what does something like this do? Well, as we're going to talk about, it brings things together. So you notice I'm in the top right corner over there, right? And we've got the screen background showing. Well, there's other things that it can do too. And I can go to what's a good example? If I go to I don't have anybody else on the call yet. I'll just go to a close-up shot of me. Here's me on the screen all by myself. I just changed that in the settings. I've got a button here I can pick, and I get something different, and boom, I'm done. And I can also do stuff like, and we'll talk about this too, I can switch over to my desktop live and show that. I can show multiple Skype calls, so these later on we're going to bring those in, and I can show I've got these predetermined layouts I've created where I can bring in different people as they're talking, and all this is just done with a click, and it all just works. It's really cool, right? I can go full screen with them down in the corner. So if I'm doing an interview type thing, it's perfect for that, all right? So I'm going to go back to this other view here, which is there, and let's move on. What I want you to notice right here, though, before we go on, is notice how I'm going from my XSplit broadcaster, and you can kind of see a view there in the window of the laptop that you've got a preview, and then the live view on the left and the live view on the right and stuff of the interface. I don't remember if that looks like Wirecast maybe. And I'm going to send that out to Zoom. It wouldn't be Wirecast. If I was using Zoom, I would send that out to Zoom and then deliver it to YouTube, or I'd deliver it to Facebook across an Ethernet cable. If I'm going to go to XSplit, I'm going to deliver it from XSplit on the laptop across an Ethernet cable, and I'm going to send it to a service. Instead of going directly to YouTube or going directly to Twitch or going directly to Facebook, I'm going to go to a site called Restream.io. And Restream.io is a distribution splitter site. It's basically you send your stream to them. They will then duplicate it and send it to Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and 20 or 30 other platforms all at the same time. I don't have the bandwidth to stream to 30 different or even 3-4 different distribution platforms like YouTube. And I don't have to. I can go to Restream.io. It will then send it all out over the cloud to those services, and your stream will automatically become live. As I'm talking, and if you're probably watching me on Twitch, I'm on YouTube right now also. And if I wanted to pay the extra money, because it's free what I'm doing, and like 30 platforms are free, but they make streaming to Facebook Live a paid service. So it's like 20 bucks a month. Now I think they have a discount going right now too, so you check that out. It's 20% off or something like that. And you can buy a yearly cheaper. So you can get 20% off the yearly cheaper, and it would probably be less than, or maybe 10 bucks a month, I'm guessing. But anyway, if you get their service, then you can stream to all of these platforms and more just by streaming to the one. And the other thing that's cool about Restream.io is they have a broadcast service where you can, not a broadcast, I'm sorry, a scheduling service where you can schedule when you want a pre-recorded stream to go live. So I could do, let's say, one of the ways that you can use this that I'm going to talk about is just setting up and doing a live stream. So you've got all your sources, everything happening all at one time. Well, another way to do it, and a lot of people are doing this, is recording your whole service and then editing it all together and then posting it on the Sunday morning for the service to happen. Well, with Restream.io, you could edit all your service together and you could post it to Restream and say, don't make this go live until 9 a.m. Pacific time this Sunday, right? And then boom, it'll automatically go live and your service will start and you're sleeping in and maybe haven't taken a shower yet, and the pastor, texts you and says, that's amazing, you're great, right? So you can do stuff like that, but you can also use Zoom, I'm sorry, not Zoom, you can also use XSplit or OBS to, in a sense, live produce your service so that you do all the things like you could do your service on Wednesday or Thursday morning, get all your staff together, get them all connected and do your service and stream to each other, and bring it into XSplit and OBS and record the output of that to a file. So all of your editing is done. One of the great things about working, and this is one of the reasons you need to look at XSplit and OBS for streaming, is one of the great things about it is all your switching can be done live as you're doing your service. And so you don't have to go back and edit things together to make it a smooth transition between things. You can just click and you're doing your CE announcements. Click, doing your youth pastor, announcements. Click, do your worship band. Click, you're doing your general announcements for the congregation. And click, you go to your pastor's study and he's at home. Fortunately, he remembered to put his clothes on and he's going to preach for a while. Click, he didn't have his clothes on, so you had to quickly go to emergency announcements for backup. Click, now you're back to the pastor. So you can do all that, and you don't have to go back and pull it all into Premiere or Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve and just edit the snot out of the thing. You can just do your service and you're done. It's saved. And then you can schedule it to deliver via Restream.io. So that's kind of cool. And you just basically upload it when you're ready and then boom, schedule it and off it'll go when it's time. So that's pretty cool. So let's go on here. I have to get my mouse back over to the other screen to do anything. Another service you can stream to, and I'm not going to spend hardly any time on this, is Wirecast. It's not a service that you stream to, I'm sorry. Another platform that you can stream with, like XSplit, like OBS, and it's a full television studio sort of thing, is Wirecast. Now, Wirecast is a lot more expensive. It's been around a little longer. It's by Telestream. It's $1,000, and it's about $250 to $500 per year in updates and patches and fixes and stuff like that. It allows you to stream to multiple resolutions, just like the others do. Like I can set my output stream to 720p or to 1080p or 4K, and that's true of all of them. But what it does that's different, it has a whole titling system that allows you to do lower thirds titles that are animated and move in and stuff on the fly as you're broadcasting. So you could set up one machine to do that within Wirecast and pump those or push those titles into your stream live while somebody else is, say, the MC or the worship leaders talking about something. They could be pumping in announcements because you want to distract the worshipers as much as you can. That's why we invented overheads, right? So then, oops, I might have just stepped on a sacred cow there. The thing that it really allows you to do, though, that's unique that I'm aware of is that they allow you to deliver and stream from a paid platform. So Decast provides data, and you have to buy data from them. but you can put all of your streams or some of your streams behind a paywall so that people can't see your youth pastors face off in the giant fluffy glove boxing match unless they pay the $9.95, right? So if you want to put content behind a paywall and make people pay for that content, then you need to use a service like Cast that has that built in where they can say, oh, I want to watch this. Oh, I got to pay. Oh, okay, here's $9.95, and they do the transaction. Then they let them in and watch them. Let them watch the content. You can't do that, to my knowledge. Maybe you can, and I just don't know. With XSplit, and you can't do that with Zoom and stuff like that. You can password protect content with Zoom, but that's not the same thing. Where here it's a paywall where you're transacting money and stuff like that. So we're going to move on. Wirecast I don't recommend because it's really expensive. Zoom I don't recommend because it's pretty crappy. And XSplit and OBS I highly recommend because they're the cat's meow and they let you do all sorts of things that you could never do otherwise. So that's cool. Let's look at this real quickly. We're going to look at just the streaming platform in general. Streaming broadcast software advantages. How am I doing for time? Yeah. Streaming broadcast software brings lots of advantages. Your stream easily mix multiple cameras, program screens, computer phones. We're going to look at all this stuff, websites, games, even right into your stream. Highly it's customizable. Visual experience makes things look great and professional quality. You can easily mix multiple sources all on the same screen at the same time. Easy switching between sources and predefined scenes. Automatic and button executed scene transitions, even stingers and fancy transitions. When I do my stream, I didn't load any of these in for this, but when I do my stream on Twitch for my gaming, when I'm streaming a game, I have all sorts of just cool little animations. Well, I think they're cool little animations that I can play when we're bored, waiting for a drop to happen or people to get in. I can play a little promo animation and stuff like that, and it's just a button. I press a button and it plays a 20-second little stinger or a donut about the beginning of the stream starting or the ending of the stream or Merry Christmas type stuff. All of that's just a single button, and we'll talk about how I trigger those too later on. But there's just a lot of versatility you can do that you just can't do on something like Zoom. It has tight integration with third-party cheap and free add-ons and features. There's all sorts of plugins, dozens of plugins for OBS and plugins for XSplit that allow you to just do some great things. We'll talk a little bit about some of those things that you can't do on Zoom. It's got a polished user interface. It's quick and easy to learn and to use. You can bring your stream up to professional level. It's simply not possible with Zoom or Skype meetings. Environments like that just can't do this. So this brings a whole better platform for your stream to function on and functionality and stuff like that. It brings the power of a full television production studio into your computer and allows you to do everything that used to require a team of people to do. And you can still use a team. You can distribute different parts of the stream that need to be done, such as titlings or overheads or triggering media to play and things like that. You can work with a team of people, and they could have 2 or 3 people managing a whole real complex stream, but you don't have to do that. You can do that all at home from your computer in your pajamas if you have to, if you need to, if you want to, if you can get away with it. So it's easy to stream to any popular platform like YouTube and Facebook and Twitch, and you can stream to all of them at once or several at once, and it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything more. So it's fantastic. There you go. It's fantastic. Computer requirements we talked about a little bit, so I'm going to skim through these. Of course, faster is better, and the more things you want to do on the same computer, like if you want to have 3 cameras, some NDI capture devices, some Zoom meetings, some Skype call meetings that you're bringing in. Programs like Pro Presenter, if you're going to run that at the same time on the same computer. If you've got some gameplay you want to capture on the computer, I don't mean like, what's the game that Minesweeper? That's not really a high thing, right? High CPU usage. That's Chris Slay. Hey, can I get Chris? Hang on one second. I'm going to call Chris and we'll get him in here. actually, Chris, I don't know if you're watching the stream, but you can wait a while. I don't know where my, here we go. I'll be talking for a bit. You can call me or I'll call you when I'm ready. Okay, sorry about that. Chris is going to call in a few minutes, so I want to speed up a little bit here. So you can just look at this, and maybe I won't even talk about it much, but the more power you have, the more things you can do all at one time on one computer. But you can distribute some of that load across other computers on the same network, such as, so like if you're at home and you have 2 or 3 computers and they're all hooked into the same internet and they have Ethernet cables, you can actually bring content in from those different screens. You could run your ProPresenter off that other computer, and you could run a webcam and somebody doing worship stuff in the other room, and then you could run the thing from your computer and pull in your pastor's sermon from his kitchen where he's making a latte, because that's going to help the sermon. You can pull all that in on the one computer. So there's a way to distribute things too. I recommend a quad core or more CPU, lots of memory, fast SSD hard drives for swapping and stuff like that, for your swap disk work area. Dual monitors are very helpful, but not essential. A bigger monitor is going to be a lot more helpful. I have a 34-inch ultra wide here, and you see my head go clear over here and clear over here, and I've got like a big monitor here. But I have my XSplit full sized, and I've got Skype open, and I've got Facebook open, and my stream I can check, and I've got notes open and stuff like that. It's all open and easy to get to. So same thing with laptop, more is better, but you can get by with surprisingly less than you think you might be able to. So let's talk about cameras. Your web camera in your laptop is horrible. It's just horrible. And I don't care how much you spent on that laptop. They put a 10-cent chip in there, and they put a piece of glass or plastic in front of it, and they called it a webcam. It's really not a webcam by most definitions. The contrast ratio, like if you had this, I've got this strong backlight here from the window, the sun's coming through it, and it's just blowing out that window, but notice I'm still okay. Well, part of that is because the camera that I'm using is a better quality camera. The optics are better, the sensor is a little better, the processing is a little better, and it's able to have more dynamic range to handle the extreme brightness of the scene without blowing that out. And so what I'd like to recommend is the lowest quality webcam that you're going to get is going to be better. No, I won't say that. Most low quality webcams that you're going to get are going to be better than the webcam that's in your laptop. So plan on getting one. They're really hard to get right now. Even the Logitech C920, which is what I'm using right now, what I recommend is a base entry-level webcam. Don't go lower than this. They're normally, I got one for $50. They're normally $70. Right now they're going for $450 because everybody wants one and they're hard to get. So, and that's used, right? It's like, whoa. So anyway, get a Logitech C920. It's actually a great little camera. It's 8 years old. It still is respectably not that much worse than the $200 web cameras that are a year or 2 years old. So yes, you can certainly get better, but for $50 to $70, or if somebody in your church has one and they say, yeah, you can use this, it's great. And it's a great bang for the buck. So I'm going to give you some expensive options, so don't worry about expensive options, but I certainly don't want to leave you without some affordable options. And the Logitech C920 always comes in as the best bang for the buck web camera out there. Now, the thing about it is it's got like a 6 foot or 8 foot cord, 6 foot cord probably. Well, that's not going to get you very far, especially if you want to end up putting your web camera not right on top of your own monitor, but you want to, film and show other things. So what I recommend doing, and I've actually done this multiple times, is I have some 64 foot, 32 foot, I've gone 128 feet by chaining them together, active USB extender cables. They're about $29 on Amazon. Some work better than others, but these work. I've used them in live situations where I've streamed. I think I set up 3 webcams with these extension cables, some of them 128 feet long, as I mentioned. And they were at a large hall with 800 kids at a choir festival. And I had one out in the audience getting the whole view of the whole stage and platform. And then I had one on off to the side, and then one that I could move around and actually get close-ups of soloists. And I would just have a stagehand move it, because this was a low-budget festival for kids. But I would just have a stagehand move that, and I had someone volunteer to do the switching, and we ran a live stream broadcast of a choir festival that parents from all over Oregon tuned in behind a paywall and paid $10 to watch their kid, maybe it was $7, to watch their kids sing on the stage at the Holt Center in Oregon. Really fun. It was really cool. So you can run multiple webcams, but I just wanted to show you here how easy it is to upgrade your stream, and that is get a better camera. Start with the C920. If you want to go more than that, great, but you can't go wrong there for getting something better. The key to making any web camera work, and it doesn't matter if it's one of these lower end ones or one of the higher end ones, as you're watching my lighting and stuff changing around here, the key to making any webcam look better, even if it's a $1,000 or $2,000 mirrorless or DSLR camera that you're using for your webcam, which we'll talk about also, is not the expense of the camera, although that certainly does add some other benefits. The key is lighting. So if you light your scene well, this camera can perform quite well, and it will. So that's something to know. If you want to add multiple cameras like we talked about, there you go. One thing I wanted to give you, it's a gotcha or a little tip, is that it's much better to plug each camera into a separate USB root hub. Those are separate ports that are connected to your motherboard separately than, or normally you'll have a hub that might have 2 or 3 ports on it, or 2 ports on it. Plug in one camera to there, find another cable coming off your motherboard that goes to another set of ports at the back, plug into one of those. Don't plug them all into the same root hub. Don't get a USB hub that has 8 ports and plug 4 cameras into it. It's not going to probably work. They'll fight for attention, and the computer won't know which one it should be listening to when, and it just doesn't seem to play very well. So plug into separate root hubs when you're adding separate cameras. That'll save you a lot of headache and pain. Now, the next thing is you can go with a thing like an NDI. NDI is this technology. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. I should have had it ready, but I didn't. It's technology that NewTek, who made the Stratocaster or something like that, maybe. No, I can't find my NDI. It's under video tools. Here we go. NewTek NDI. You go get the NewTek NDI app, and I just did now. Turn it on. I load it, and then I'm gonna. Jessica, are you still there? And then I'm gonna go up here to my. I push record on the camera, and so this is what it looks like on the back of the camera, right? I push that little red button so it's recording, and then I'm gonna switch to my Wildcam here. We'll see if it works. I just changed a bunch of network stuff, so maybe it's lost. We'll check that here. If it doesn't work, I won't do it right now because I didn't get a chance to test this again today. I use it often, so I just kind of hoped it would normally work as it normally does. And it looks like it's failing me. Failing me now. Yeah, fine. Okay, well, let's do this. We'll do one more thing. We're going to add device webcam catch card. We're going to add a video. No. Yeah, it's not, for some reason it's not connecting. It could be because my network's all screwed up. I just changed my, you guys are wondering where he went, right? I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. I changed my internet connectivity, and I was putting off when it was going to actually do its switchover with Comcast, and they didn't care, and they turned off my router before I could install their newer router, and took down all my Wi-Fi. And that's actually why this isn't working. I come to think of it, because my Wi-Fi's down. This comes over Wi-Fi. Basically, it becomes a very good web camera, with a slight delay. So the only downside of this is it's through Wi-Fi, so there's going to be a little bit of a delay, but the image quality that comes through, this is an iPhone 6s Plus or something like that. Any newer phone, and you can use an Android phone also, is going to have a much better camera in it than the Logitech C920 has in it. And it's going to do better video for you also, but there will be a slight delay. So I would use it on things that don't matter. Like, I wouldn't use it as a, say, a moving, like a gimbaled little, you can get little gimbals for these, right? I wouldn't use it for a moving gimbaled stabilized shot to push in on your drummer during a worship band thing, doing some fancy licks, because it's not going to be in sync. Maybe you wouldn't even notice it so much on the drumming, because sticks tend to blur at low frame rates anyway. But if you're lip syncing, the vocalist isn't going to sync up to the video by the time it gets in with the rest of the stream of the audio, which comes right in. So I wouldn't use it for that. But if you're just having one person that's maybe remotely interviewing somebody, I was thinking normally you could use it to interview people before a service if you're streaming a live service and there's actually people there. You guys probably don't do services where actual humans show up anymore, but you could certainly use it where you're bringing in another video source from the other room, as long as you're on the Wi-Fi network, real time, just slight delayed audio. But if it's just their audio coming through that phone, you won't know that it's slightly delayed. It won't look delayed. It's only when you blend it in with the audio that's coming in from a mixer or something like that. So you can add, a couple web cameras, and you can add an NDI sourced iPhone or Android, and have 3 camera views for your stream. And I show this super speed thing here. You don't care about this. Probably most laptops are going to have a USB 3 port, and you're going to maybe get a USB 3 hub. That was an older port, and this is an older graphic that I had. So let's go on. And I think here, here I talk about real cameras a little bit. So the Logitech, like I said, is older. The Brio is newer. It's about $150 to $200 or $400 right now because of the COVID-19 run on all things streaming. The Brio is not that great. It is slightly and noticeably better than the C920, but it's 4 times the price, and it'll do 4K, and the 920 is a 1080p webcam. The thing to keep in mind when you're buying any webcam is that you want in-camera sensor encoding, data encoding, so that there's a chip in the camera that takes that video and encodes it into a data stream that's compressed, so that you're not running tons of data down that USB pipe that then your computer has to deal with. So you want the camera to have in-camera encoding. But honestly, if you stay with the C920 or the newer revs of that, you're going to love it. If you want the Brio, fine, but it's probably not going to be that much of a difference. You notice here the image quality that I'm giving you right now, it's not that bad. This is an 8-year-old camera, and it's $50, and it just looks way better than what a lot of platform, people are putting out from their laptop. Real cameras, bigger, better sensors. Bigger is better on sensors, and laptops have generally pretty lousy, tiny sensors, and better lenses are hugely important. So better lenses help a lot, and these bigger cameras have better lenses. Better signal. So if you're using a real camera, you're going to get a pure HDMI signal is going to come out. You want a clean HDMI out. It's going to come out of that camera. I don't have my DLSR here. I should probably, or my mirrorless here. I should probably grab that. And out the side, you're going to take a HDMI cable out, and you're going to bring it into a capture device. We'll talk about those in a moment. You can actually see it there below the HDMI cable, below the camera. We have the Elgato and the Magwell HDMI to USB capture cards. There's like the Elgato 60 HD60 Pro or HD60S. There's the internal, external versions of those. The Camlink 4K is probably the best bang for the buck because it does full 4K capture. You're not going to need 4K capture, but a day will come when you might decide to start streaming in 4K, and it'd be nice to be able to get it. But right now, you only need the 1080p, generally speaking, because you don't want to bring in 2 or 3 or 4 DSLRs or mirrorless cameras at 4K, ingest those into your computer, and just swamp it with data crunching of combining all of that data. Because 4K, remember, is going to be 4 times the bandwidth needs of a 1080p stream. And so it's just, a lot of computers aren't going to be able to handle that. And you may not have the bandwidth to pump out a 4K stream anyway. And nobody in your church is likely going to watch it in 4K either. So it's just not necessarily, worth it. Anyway, there's some different options there. I think I can zoom in here and you can see. No, it crunched it up. Sorry about that. I can post a list of those, but all of them are great. The Camlink 4K is probably the best for the money. It's $130 and does 4K 30, I think, and 1080p 60, and the quality looks great, and there's hardly any delay, hardly any lag. Anytime you're introducing lag, it's more things to have to worry about and sync with. So you're going to get clean HDMI out with a good camera for that, and you'll have some wireless options too. You can actually add HDMI to HDMI wireless transmitters, so you can send your camera 200 feet away, or you can use a 100-foot HDMI cable. I've got big, long HDMI cables that I use on some things. So what cameras to use? Well, the Sony A5100 is pretty well respected. It's from 2014. It's a standard Sony E-mount. That's an APS-C, which is a small crop sensor size sensor. It'll do 1080p 60. It'll do 1080p 30. It comes with a little zoom kit lens. It's $550 used, I think, or new. Now that everything's more expensive, new or used, or it's hard to win. The Sony A6400 is about $800 used. That's a nice camera, better camera. I'm not a big Sony fan, but for streaming, Sony comes in really well because it has clean HDMI output. And by clean output, that just means that when you get the HDMI coming out the side of the camera and you bring it into your computer, it doesn't have all of your ISO and shutter speed and aperture settings and auto intelligent IO color balance and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have all the stuff written on your screen and on your settings. So in that case, you can stream that because you don't need all that junk otherwise, right? Then other cameras are the Panasonic Lumix G7 is popular for streaming, about $400, $500 with a lens. The Canon EOS M200 is nice. It's a crop sensor again. It's bigger than APS-C, I believe. It'll do 4K, 24, 1080p 60. I actually kind of like the Nikon Z50. It's about $1,000 new. They're on sale right now, and I think you can get them with a adapter for $50 to use any of the Nikon older legacy glass. It's basically a smaller crop sensor version of the Nikon Z6, which is a fantastic camera. I have a Z7. It's an amazing camera, and the Z6 is an amazing camera. And if you could stream with a Z6 or a Z7, which I could if I could get a Elgato Camlink 4K, which I can't for $400. I'm not going to do that. Then you would have an amazing image because the optical lens system on the Z system is amazing. The sensor's amazing, and you'll get beautiful, beautiful images. I saw somebody on Facebook in the Worship Leaders Plus group. They were asking about cameras and wanted to know, and what people recommended. And some people had recommended the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which is a great camera, but it doesn't have autofocus, and there's no autofocus system you can add to it. So if you've got a cameraman who is good at pulling focus, that's great. You don't care. But most of us are on a reduced crew. It's me, or it's me and my spouse, or me and my dog. And my spouse and my dog don't want to pull focus. The dog might want to more, but they're going to do it with their teeth. So autofocus suddenly becomes a real issue, and it's important. And if you've got face detection or eye autofocus detection, all the better. So I wouldn't recommend going with that Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera just because it doesn't have autofocus. Other than that, it's a great camera. But if you're going to live stream and you're on a limited crew, I'd rather have 3 cameras that autofocus set up in different positions and one person moving around between cameras and maybe zooming in and, you know, changing the angle or something like that while I'm switched to a different scene. Then have cameras that if the subject moves at all, they're out of focus. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. And I say that because I've filmed and videoed a lot of live events and a lot of music videos and stuff like that. And I pull focus manually when it's to my advantage to do so, and when it's to my advantage to autofocus, I let the camera do that work. And you shouldn't, you know, have to work harder than you need to, and a lot of times you don't want to do it. So keep that in mind when you're looking at cameras. Any of these on this list would be great options, and they go up in price, but there you go. Consider focal length. Fisheye lenses are super wide, and they kind of like, you can stand in a corner. Actually, you can stand at the end of a room and almost see the walls almost up to your left and right, you know, immediately, like they're right there. It's that wide of a field of view. You don't really want that for broadcasting because it does give you really curved barreled lines. And an ultra wide is pretty popular for It's popular for streamers because you get a lot in. This is like a 92 degree angle of view coming out of this camera, which is like if you stuck this camera in the corner, you might see the walls on both sides just framing the border of the edge if it was right in the very corner, and you'd see the entire room from there. Well, that's great if I'm up close and personal and I want to show something behind the person, and so that's popular, but it's not as natural and great of a look, and especially as you work over to the sides of a frame. Notice how the side of my head is starting to smear over there. And it's going to add distortion. So if you're shooting a group of people where you've got some in the middle and some kind of spread out and they're standing further back, the people who are further back, notice the width of my hand here versus the width of my hand here. It's going to get, it's going to get wider as I go to that frame. The people who are on the wider sides of that scene are going to look heavier. They're going to weigh more, it looks like. They're going to gain weight. Then they'll be mad at you. You don't want people to get mad at you. So kind of the determining factor isn't the angle of the lens of field of view. The determining factor really should be how many people do I need in my shot and how much room do I have to put that camera away from them in order to get them in the shot. Ideally, and on a big television studio stage, they have a lot of room where they can pull that camera back and they can use a narrower focal length, more almost telephoto or sometimes telephoto, which is going to be more flattering to the talent's face. Now, I don't know if you have talent. On my streams, I don't have talent. On my gaming streams, I don't have any talent. So I'm not used to working with talent, but they like to be considered talent and they like to be made to look better. So the wider the angle of the lens, the more weird, distorted, and alien their face is going to look. And the more normal to portrait and telephoto range you go, the more natural and pleasant their face is going to look. So if you have room and you can use a 50 millimeter lens, a normal lens, on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera and pull your camera back a little bit to get 2 or 3 people in the frame, it's going to look much more broadcast quality, much more professional than a webcam per se. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind, and telephoto, extreme telephoto, stuff like that. So let's talk about lighting. So, So, color temperature. I'm going to go fast through this because you guys don't want to learn all this stuff, but I want you to be aware of it. The single most important change you can make to improve your image quality is lighting, and that starts with color temperature, or you're going to get bit. Make a $70 camera look good. It can make a $200 camera look great. It can make a $1,000 camera look fantastic. You can get a professional quality headshot with an iPhone 4 if you light it well, and people will pay you money for it, and they'll go, wow, that's a beautiful photo. But you can't do it as easily as if you have a good camera that is more forgiving and lets you fix it in Photoshop, right? But lighting is that important. So you can make your whole frame and set look great. I could have put something in the window behind me, but I want you to see what things like that do. Notice how it affects the exposure, right? When I pull over here to the side, and the camera's on auto, so it's automatically doing stuff. So I wouldn't let my camera automatically do stuff. But I want you to see what goes on with that. When you see people who talk about streaming and stuff, and they're using their stream setup, they're in a perfectly darkened off bedroom that then they light perfectly. And so time they turn things on, it always looks good. Well, you want to kind of do that. I didn't want to for this case. And normally I stream at night, so I don't care. I have kind of a cool spotlight that comes down on that thing. And I also use a green screen. I pull out my green screen and hide it behind, or hang it behind me, and I can put any background behind I want. And plus I can have the game background going on behind me. But I didn't think you really wanted to see my green screen. So the point is that you want to consider the background, how that's lit, and light sources that are in it, and me, the subject, and you want to consider everything that's in your scene for lighting. And the thing to know is that there's multiple things about lighting. There's brightness, there's color temperature, there's the nature, and then we can modify it. So brightness is just how bright is the light. Like we got sunlight streaming in that window. I've got sunlight bouncing off a red wall over here. And I've got diffuse light other places. But it's pretty bright in here right now. Later on, it's going to get darker. You turn the lights out, it gets really dark. So brightness, is it bright? You can adjust the brightness to match what your camera can handle. The color temperature is a whole different thing. So in the middle of the day, the color temperature, as you see this chart here, I loved this. I hadn't seen it before. At high noon, it's this blue kind of light. And as you get to the sunrise and sunset sides, it's very orange and golden. That's why it's called the golden hour. And that's because the blue sky is filtering out the oxygen in the air is filtering out the blue light waves, and we're getting more of the orange. But if you look down at the CRI rating, the bottom right here, notice the big blob in the back. That's what the sun puts out. That's got, I'm going the wrong way here. That's got a full spectrum natural daylight at high noon. All of that visible light at those wavelengths is what comes off the sun. It's still filtered a little bit because of our atmosphere, but if you're out in space, it'd look a bit different, but that's what we get. An LED puts out, notice, a lot less of the deep blues and the real deep reds, and almost none of the really deep purples. And a incandescent, like a filament, tungsten, I can't say it, filament, you know, that Thomas Edison thing, that gives off very little of the lower end of the spectrum, but it gives you a nice, warm, bright yellows through reds. That's why tungsten's so orange looking. And a CFL, like a compact fluorescent, it's a nightmare. It's just weird colors everywhere and a ton of green. And that's why people actually look green under CFL and fluorescent lighting. And it's just terrible. So you want to be careful. Notice on the left bottom, we have different light fixtures with different light bulbs. And those light bulbs have different color temperatures. Be careful when you're buying your light bulbs to light yourself, if you're doing it on the cheap, that you match the color temperature that you want for your scene, because professional lights let you dial in the color temperature. Like I've got nice little lights that I can turn the color temperature from 32 or even 2700 Kelvin up to 8000 Kelvin. And so I can match under the shade, or I can match evening, or I can match candlelight, or I can match bright noon sun. And your monitor gives off a certain color temperature, typically 4500, 4000, maybe 5000, depends on the quality of the monitor and the LEDs behind it. And so if you're going to be illuminating yourself a lot with your monitor, find out what that is, and then find lights that match it. And you'll have, not weird, strange casts of two different kinds of light fighting each other. You can see all sorts of different light things going on right now because I've got sunlight bouncing in, and it's bouncing off a really deep red Tuscan wall like you see in the background. I've got that in front of me. So there's all sorts of weird lighting things going on here. But you'll see that when you're doing your stuff. So we've got how bright it is, we've got the color temperature, and then there's the character and nature of it. So notice the guy on the left has really sharp, hard shadows. Notice the shadow on coming off his nose right underneath his eye. It's just this razor edge shadow. But the guy on the right, his really soft, gentle, smooth, wrapped light. Well, the only difference between those two shots is that the one is the bare light hitting him from a small point light source, and the other one is a soft diffused light. And we diffuse light with anything that's handy. Honestly, as I've been a photographer, a portrait photographer for a long time now, and light is light is light is light. You can see that GVM video LED panel lighting system. It has RGB color variations and stuff like that, and it's cheap. It's like $350 or so, and you get 3 pretty good size LED panels that you can change remotely with an iPhone to reds and greens and blues. It'll do lightning effects and candlelight effects. It can change your color temperature from 27 to I think 6,000 Kelvin. So it's perfect for doing video work, and it'd be perfect for lighting your stream. It's probably more than you want to pay, but it's no different, no better than putting a light bulb and bouncing it off a piece of white foam core, if you get the light bulb that has the color temperature that you want in the first place. This will let you make a wider light source from the get-go and adjust the color and the brightness really easily. It's got dimmer also. A light bulb, you have to add a dimmer to it, and you have to get the right color temperature in it. If you want to change the color temperature, you have to change the light bulbs, right? So professional lighting has these niceties that make it easier to adapt to different situations. But if you know what your situation is going to be, just get the cheap stuff for now and make an improvement. You don't really see it right there, but there's a little tinier, smaller light underneath there, and I don't want to switch scenes. That's maybe $30, $50. Maybe I don't remember. Did I put the price over there? I didn't. They're like $30 to $50, and you could get 2 of those and put them to either side of you, just out of frame, above the monitor, and they'll light you up and you'll look great. And people say, what happened? And you'll say, I just look great. But they're bigger than a point light source, and they're going to be a soft wrapping light. And the bigger the source, the softer the light. If I was to get rid of the sun, this monitor is a big wrapping light source, and it would light my face really nicely until I go to a dark planet where I'm being shot at by mechs who have night vision, and then my face is going to be black with puffs of orange as I get blown up. So you have to have some lighting that is independent of whatever's changing on the screen, and control is then the issue. But light is light is light is light is light. You can grab a light from anywhere in your house and bounce it off of a sheet, or bounce it off of a couple sheets of paper. I've literally taken shots of people through pieces of paper with my flash before, where I'll hold it this far away from their head, right? I'll hold it right there, and I'll pop my flash through it, and it makes this big diffuse light, and they look amazing. I didn't have to have, a $3,000 light modifier. So bigger light source is going to look more flattering. Modifiers include things like umbrellas, soft boxes, and soft umbrellas, and things like that. Those are common. I have all of those things. I used all of those things for still photography, and I use them for video sometimes. Reflector panels, like those white ones, one is partly transparent or translucent. They're both translucent, actually. One's very translucent. And they reduce the light, or they diffuse the light, or they do both, or they bounce and reflect the light. The other one's a silver or gold reflector. They'll bounce a lot of light back into a subject. You don't usually want to use those. There's barn doors to control the spread of light. I actually have those on some lights up I have hanging up here. And there's grids, which I have on a light that I'm shining on that thing back there. And there's spots, gobos, and snoots, that snoot thing with the little colored gels. The gobos are the little things with the funny patterns. You put those in front of the light, and they'll cast cool shadows on the wall. You can do that with a flashlight, an LED light, and cut some cardboard slots and shapes and put it in front of the flashlight, point it at the wall during your stream, and it'll look like you've got, or shoot it through a plant the leaves of a plant, and it'll look like you've got this cool kind of lighting thing. And put a colored gel in front of it, and it'll look cool. So you can do all this stuff for free, basically. And then those little black things there, those are flags, or they're basically blocking or absorbing light. So you can have light not bounce back as much from something and not have not as strong of fill on somebody's face. And there's a whole bunch of gels there, so we're gonna move on. All of that stuff, some of that's mostly expensive stuff, right? It adds up. But you can do all this stuff for free, and this is the more important part. You have windows, use your windows. Use the lights you have in the house. Use diffusers, and you can go down and buy some ripstop super thin fabric. I have some actually that I hang in front of my window when it gets really hot, the other window to the side of me, so the sun doesn't blast in and kill me. And it costs like $4, and I hang it over the window and keeps the room a lot cooler. But it also makes this beautiful diffused light. So if I want to go stand there and take a picture, it's all ready to go. You can get foam core artboard, and you can bounce light with that and use light fill. So here's some little lighting diagrams. Notice there's that chair, the top thing on top picture. There's a chair by window light. Window light has been used for hundreds and hundreds of years for portrait paintings and portrait photographs more recently, and still used today. It's beautiful, it wraps, it's soft, it's big, it's a big light source. You get close to it and you get gorgeousness. If you don't have a window, this guy faked a window. I do that all the time. I set up a scrim, I run light shining through it so that it hits it, and then it diffuses it in all different directions. I don't get a strong beam, and I get a beautiful soft wrapping light. What you're seeing on me is a lot of light from different places. It does the same thing. If I've got a lot of light sources, they're going to become more wrapping, and they're going to cover stuff up, like wrinkles. Nobody wants wrinkles. And then down below, we've got that window with a reflector. So just like our scene above, both those scenes, we've got the window on one side, and you can take a white foam core and bounce some of that light to the shadow side of your subject, and then that subject's going to look really nice. And set your webcam out in front of them, right? If you've got a bigger room with windows, bring your camera right by the windows and put your subject back a ways from the windows, and your background's going to be darker because it's further back, and your subject's going to look beautifully lit evenly. It'll be gorgeous. And if you want to add a little bit of separation, notice that on my on this side there's nothing. It just kind of blends in with the background. But on this other side, there's a little bit of highlight around my ear and around the hair here and around my shoulder. Coming from that window, that's a kicker. It's a kicker light. So having that window there also shows you other things that can go on. I've got a little light that I turn on here when I stream, and that turns on and gives me a little bit of a kicker light on the same side. So that doesn't help. But if I had it on the other side, it would give me a kicker light on that side. So you can separate the background. That's just a little gridded spot that I stuck up there on that drawing down below where the window rim kicker light. You could set up a little spot. The reason I put a grid on it, and you could make a grid, by the way, out of things like toilet paper rolls. I might have shown a picture of that later on. The reason I put a grid on it is so that the light's not bare and shining directly into the lens of my camera, which will make some lens flare. And then you can even use if you don't want to go buy, I'm going to show you some expensive lights besides those other ones, the 3-pack LED panels. You can buy some foam core boards and stick them. You could cut it in half, so you'd have two big foam core panels that you're sitting, up in front of your monitor, up above it, just right behind it. And then you could literally shine some spotlights at it, put them on dimmers so you can adjust them, but you could shine some spotlights, maybe get some 3200 Kelvin spotlights. Nah, not when you're streaming. They're not going to go very well with your monitor. So get some 4000 Kelvin or 5000 Kelvin LED spotlights. And that way they won't get hot or anything like that. And just aim them at those panels, and those panels will become two big diffuser soft lights, and you'll look fantastic. And you can do the same thing, put them on a stand or something, or have a kid hold them, and you can shine a light at them. They can hold the light in one hand and the panel in the other because it's light. They're going to get tired. They're not really going to do that in a real stream. But just to get an idea what you can do with it, kind of moving around like, oh, okay, I like it here. Then set it on a stand, a cheap stand. Set it on a chair. Do whatever you have to fix it. And light your subject, and they'll look fantastic. And if you want it to be softer, use the full sheet of foam core. Don't cut it in half, and bounce that light. I've taken some beautiful portraits with a single flash, aimed away from the subject, bounced off of a big sheet of foam core that's 3 feet away from the subject, and you'd never know that the shot was taken with a $3 sheet of foam core. It's gorgeous. It looks like it was shot, with a $2,000 softbox or something like that. So there you go. Green screens we're going to blow through real quickly. And man, I'm just chewing through the time here, aren't I? So if you want to know about green screens, I'm going to leave this here and let you kind of look at it. You can come back and look at this and read it yourself. The main thing to highlight here is that notice the top-down view on the far right of the person on the green screen. Light your background. Light your background separate from the subject, and have your subject in front of those lights so they're not picking up any of that light. And you want to light your background smoothly and evenly to minimize any wrinkles and to make the color gradient consistent as much as possible throughout the entire background. What that does is it gives you a nice, easy key. So it's one click, one click, or even an automatic key. Boom, done, happens, looks great. And it's all because of the lighting of that background. So light your background evenly. You don't have to you can get paper backgrounds, you can get collapsible fabric backgrounds, and you can get paint. And there's expensive paint and there's do-yourself paint. And there's this little lighting tube, check that out, it's really great. They work great for that. We're moving on. So, Zoom and Skype. So we've talked about bringing a Logitech webcam in or several, and an NDI phone camera in, and maybe a higher end DLSR or mirrorless camera through HDMI capture in. But what about Zoom and Skype? It turns out that you can capture Zoom, your Zoom meeting. You can capture that Zoom session window, and you can include it into your live stream through XSplit. You can do this with OBS also. By the way, I prefer XSplit for a lot of reasons, but and I've used both, and I used OBS initially, and I switched over to XSplit about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I'll never go back. It's just, it's more polished, it's leaner, it's solid, it's easier to learn, it's got more flexible features, and they've got a development team that's developing it instead of people who do it for free because they love it. There are people who are paid to do it who love it. And so they're going to be around, and they're producing more products all the time. And so I highly recommend you try out it's free. What do you got to lose? It's like the best, and it's free. So anyway, you can bring your Zoom session into your XSplit Broadcaster project and stream that all in there. You can bring in 10 or 20 people if you want. I would recommend, if you have a lot of people and you're doing a fancy stream, you're probably going to be fine with quite a few people if you've got a fast enough machine. But if you don't, then I would recommend maybe doing your Zoom session on another laptop or computer, and then now you could use an iPad actually, even too, an iPad Pro or something if it's fast enough. And you can use a screen share, which I'll talk about, and you could bring that Zoom session through a Elgato screen share app into XSplit with the Elgato screen capture plugin. And then you can bring that whole session in without slowing down your machine at all for other things that you're doing. So if you want to have like the, I don't know, just a group of people that are doing a quick all-in announcement thing, you can bring that into the stream in real time without any problem at all, using NDI sources. So NDI is that new tech driver. So you can share your XSplit stream as your cameras. Also, so I can share my stream out of my XSplit. I can share that to when Chris calls, or I call Chris and get him in here. I can share what you guys are all seeing. I can share that to him so he sees that too. I can run Skype on the same computer if I want, which is what I'm doing. I can run Skype on a different computer, and I can share that over network NDI. You would need to run XSplit on that other computer too, because XSplit would then capture and send that through NDI, across the network, across the Ethernet cables to my computer directly. You can bring Zoom in via a Windows capture, but Skype you can actually use an NDI source, I think, directly. And let's see, you can bring in your Zoom meeting and broadcast them along with your other content, blah, blah, blah. Run your Zoom meeting on the same computer or on another computer or a laptop, or a iPad Pro, right? So that's totally cool, because a lot of people are doing their service with Zoom and that's it. And they're not able to take advantage of all this other stuff that you can do once you're in XSplit. You can bring in another computer and anything that's on it, including sermon lyrics and scriptures and sermon notes and illustrations and media and music and videos. You can bring your Pro Presenter through an NDI source. You can bring Easy Worship in through an NDI source and do all the stuff you would normally do in your normal church service off this other laptop. If you have enough horsepower, you can run it all off the same computer, right? So that's pretty cool, and makes things a lot easier than you might imagine. And remember, all this is then going out to Restream.io and going to multiple platforms all at the same time. Really cool. So you can bring anything in from another computer directly into your XSplit OBS as an NDI screen source. Bring in Pro Presenter. Easy Worship, talk about that. Bring in separate callers, conference calls, talk shows, interviews, pastor, question and answer stuff. You could do that. You could do like, we'll talk about some of that stuff too, but you can offload to other computers and then bring that in, or you can do it all in the same thing. It's very flexible. You just want to have good connectivity. So here's the iPad. Here's the Elgato screen share. You want to be in network, at least on Wi-Fi, so there'll be a slight delay. I was going to use my wife's iPad Pro and show you some stuff with that, because you can draw and do presenting and teaching just like you do the chalkboard on Zoom, but it's all on a really much nicer chalkboard than what Zoom gives you, right? And you can trigger videos there too and stuff like that. So it uses Elgato Screen Share app and the screen capture driver for XSplit and Windows, for Windows. Use your tablet as a chalkboard, a teaching tool, slideshow, even stream your gameplay. I wasn't talking about gameplay. You can bring in Skype and Zoom calls from that. Also, you can draw, illustrate, highlight, use your pen and stylus. It's pretty cool. Now, let's talk about sound. You're gonna love this. Sound is as important as the video. Sound and the music are 50% of the entertainment in a movie, says George Lucas. He knows something about sound. He knows something about movies. Films are 50% visual and 50% sound. Sometimes sound even overplays the visual. That's David Lynch, he's a director. The truth is, for me, it's obvious that 70-80% of a movie is sound. That's Danny Boyle. I don't even know. I imagine he's a director. I don't know. And this is Bruce Searle. He's famous. No, he's not famous. The sound and the music are 50% of the entertainment in a movie. I'm stealing George Lucas. The other 50% is the audio. The audio, the sound, the music, the sound effects, the voice, everything you hear is actually more important than what you see. So if you can only have good audio or good video, then choose good audio over choose better video. And getting good audio is 90% technique and knowledge, and it's only 10% gear. Maybe closer to 95% technique and knowledge and 5% gear. Most things for better sound are free or cheap. So, as with lighting, control is key. Control your room, control your noise, control the acoustics, placement of the microphone and the sound sources or musicians in the room, and your levels and direction and angle of all of that stuff. I'm not going to do a whole thing on acoustics. I'm not going to do a whole thing on microphone technique and microphones and stuff like that. I'll do a little bit of that, but we'll start with the basics and give you a little bit about that. Let's talk about acoustics. Hard surfaces reflect, and they reflect all frequencies if they're dense, hard surfaces, like concrete walls, concrete floors, concrete ceilings, concrete walls. You go into a concrete room or a tile room or shower tile room, they're dense, they're hard, they bounce everything back, all frequencies. Large rooms and halls, oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Soft, dense, and absorptive surfaces soak up sound. They don't reflect sound. They soak it up and make it disappear. They turn it into mechanical heat energy. So you can control a room by sucking up some of the sound that would normally be bouncing around in there. And so if you're miking from a distance, you're going to pick up a lot of the bounce around sound and not so much of the person you're trying to mic or the instrument you're trying to mic. But if you come in close, you're going to isolate that person or that sound, and you won't have to have your mic up as loud. So then you can turn down, in effect, all the room ambient sounds. Before I started the stream, I closed my windows. They were open to allow the nice spring and the birds and stuff, but cars go by and they make lots of noise. And when I'm tracking a vocalist, we stop sometimes because the low frequency rumble of a pickup truck or a delivery truck going by will actually get through 2 walls and get onto my track. So we stop and we wait for it to go by. So controlling those sounds is important, and you can do all that free, basically. You can take a mattress, you can shove it up against the wall, you can hang some, close your curtains. Whenever I track vocals, I close the curtains and absorb all that high reflection coming off the windows. And I've got big floor-to-ceiling curtains, and I bought heavier grade duty curtains just so they'd have more absorptive power. And then I have some sound baffling panels that are 2x2 that I put up in the walls, on the walls. I lean them up against the walls, or I lean them against the dresser, pull out a drawer and put them in the dresser drawer, leaning against the top of the dresser so they kind of lean there. And I put those directly perpendicular to the microphone and the wall. So like if it's the wall and the microphone's here in the middle, I put a sound absorber on this end and a sound absorber on that end, and the sound bounces into the wall and dies, disappears. Otherwise, it would bounce back and cause standing wave interference and stuff. So think about where your sound's coming through. The thing you can do is walk around literally and clap in the room and listen to the reflections and where they come from, and if they're bright or dark and harsh, and then decide, okay, where are they minimal or where are they at least more pleasant, and put your microphone there and put your instrumentalist or your vocalist there. And then get rid of secondary or at least first reflections in that room by putting up a blanket or putting up a chair in the way or anything that absorbs. I use, if I have a chair and I need to, I'll put more laundry on it to soak up low bass frequencies, and I'll put the chair in the corner if I have to. Or you can put bass traps in the corner. These little pyramid thingamajiggers here are just foam sound absorption panels. You can buy them, put them on the wall, but unless you're going to do this all the time, you don't want to do that. So just use what's there. That works fine, doesn't matter. So find the best place in the room, use that, treat your room absorption. You don't want parallel walls, things like that, because they bounce back and forth and back and forth. If the wall's even a little bit out of parallel, that sound wave's going to go and it's going to disperse longer and further and out at a different angle, and you won't get standing waves. So remove the early reflections. The more instruments that you put in a room playing and singing at the same time, if you're doing a band, the more important it is to isolate those instruments from each other and the noise in the room. So you do that by using a microphone that has a pickup pattern that is either controllable or set at a fairly narrow directional cardioid type pickup pattern. We'll talk about that in a second. And you want to get that mic source close to that instrument so that you don't have to turn it up very much, because the instrument will still be loud enough and you can minimize those other things. You want at least, rule of thumb is, you want at least 12 dB of separation of volume level between any instrument and any other mic in the room. And I always try to go for more. You do that by putting things between the players. It doesn't look good, but if you're tracking it live, you can find some things that don't look as bad, right? Maybe you do it strategically and artfully. I don't know. Normally, if you're gonna track, like, you could actually have your players play to a pre-recorded track and then they look good. You don't care what it sounds like. There's ways to do that too. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna do it live, think about the acoustics and soak up some of that sound. Use close miking whenever possible, direct feeds when you can, stuff like that. Now, something else is, you're not going to be able to pitch correct a singer if there's a piano bleeding into their channel. So if you've got a singer and a vocalist, don't have the singer stand right in front of the piano with the microphone aiming directly back at the piano, because then that microphone's going to pick up a lot of piano. And if they're singing out of tune and you want to pitch correct them, and there are real-time pitch correction plugins that you can run during your stream, it's going to tune them, but at the same time, it will pull the piano out of tune. And then that's horrible. So you don't want that because it'll blend that back in with the stream. So in that case, it's better to have your vocalist stand to the to the side of the piano with the mic aiming away from the piano, or behind the piano with the mic aiming back away from the piano, and not in front with it aiming back at the piano. Just a little tip there. You'll want to mix in another room. Don't mix in the same room that all the sound's in. Even if you've got a good set of cans, there's just so much bleed that comes in. Until you get a good mix with proper EQ, and so you can kind of save that, you just want to do it in another room. So bring, even if you have to get an extension and bring your headphones out underneath the door and leave your board in there, go out and listen to it somewhere else so you can hear it and then go, okay, I need to lower the bass and I need to bring up this. Okay, and you go back in and make a couple more tweaks, go out, close the door again, check it again. And we're going to talk about mixing next, I think. It's nice to be able to save your mix. No, we're not quite to mixing. Sorry. Chris, I'm going to get you in here because we're talking about audio stuff, and you'll probably have a lot of stuff that we could jump in on this. So let me call you. Let's see. I know. I like how it kind of skips a little bit of beat, so it gets you a little off.
All right.
Here we go. Hey, yeah, go with the landscape. Great. So this is Chris Slay. Chris has become, unbeknownst to him, he's become my friend over the last year or so, and mainly because he doesn't rail too hard at me when I make dumb comments on the worship talk group. That makes him, qualify. And I'm going to get you here onto a shot. What do I have here? I have this. Let's see. There you are. I'm going to find with just you and me, maybe. Maybe I might have to have that strange one. I didn't have time to get all my other shots set up the way I wanted to. We could do this. Oh, this isn't bad. Here's 3 up. I'll put you here for now until I find a better one. So Chris, I've just started talking about audio stuff. I don't know. Have you been listening to any of this?
I haven't, no.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about audio stuff a little bit, and I figured this might be good for you to kind of be part of. And then if you want to chime in on any of it, that's good too. So let me go back to my slide that has me and him. Okay. So I talked about separation. If you're doing live mixing in a room to try to get good microphone separation, stuff like that. And one of the things to do that with is your microphone pattern besides absorbing sound and putting barriers and things like that. But I'm just going to talk about, if you can see what I'm showing them, right?
Yep.
So we talked about how your your webcam is horrible, and adding even a low end separate webcam is going to be much better than just using whatever webcam's on your laptop or something like that when you're streaming. And we talked about cameras and all that kind of stuff. So we're past all that stuff. So now we're going to talk about audio. And in general, the microphone on your laptop is horrible. And so if you're streaming and relying on the microphone to do that, you're just asking for not mediocrity. You're asking to torture people who have to listen to you.
Yes.
So the first thing you can do to improve your audio really is to get a different microphone. And there's lots of ways to do that. We're going to show some really cheap ways and some more expensive ways. And Chris will probably chime in on some of this stuff too, but here we go. So your webcam mic is even probably only slightly less horrible than your laptop mic. So you don't want to use that either. And part of the reason is because they're omnidirectional mics. They pick up from all directions. They're cheap mics, so they pick up poorly from all directions. And they leave a lot of frequencies that you and I would have maybe liked to have had on the table. And then they're placed in the worst possible position for picking up anything else. They're great for picking up lots of room noise. So then what manufacturers do is they add things like auto noise cancellation and limiting and gating. And so they turn the mic off when the sound level drops below a certain rate. and they want to make the stream, as compact as possible. So they chop off everything above a certain frequency and below a certain frequency. Then they overcompress the snot out of it and they send that down your stream. And so it sounds terrible because it is terrible. You can do things like add a headset. Like when I stream, I use a headset. I always keep it right here, and I can put it on, and it has a nice little boom mic that's actually a decent mic, decent headphones, a little bit of EQ. It sounds pretty good. It's good because it's right there. It's not as directional. I mean, it's more directional. It's not as omnidirectional. And so I don't have to turn it up as much because it's right there. But it doesn't look as good when you're preaching with a headset.
Right.
Or if you're leading worship with a headset.
Yeah.
So, because I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. I guess you could do that, but that's why we went to in-ears and things like that. So what I recommend, if it's just you and you don't care, but you just want, and you're not doing a bunch of worship stuff or anything else, but you just want to bring the quality level of your stream up, get a microphone. And I show this Samson little meteor mic here, not because it's the end all be all, but for $60, it's a great little USB microphone. It's got a 1-inch large diaphragm condenser capsule in it. I've used them. They sound fantastic for the money. You're not going to get a better sounding mic for $60. The trouble with it is, and this is really the only trouble, is it is its own interface. It uses a USB interface, and it has delay by the time you get that sound in there. And so if you're trying to sync the sound that you're picking up with that USB mic, oh, and by the way, you could use those USB extender cables and put this in another room if you wanted to. But again, it's going to have a delay, and you're going to have to then sync that delay in your XSplit or OBS setup with a few milliseconds of syncing time, basically. And it doesn't have direct monitoring, because if you listen to it through your computer, you'll talk, and then you'll talk, and then you'll talk, and it'll be behind. And you'll go, well, that's not good. So instead, to get around that, they let you plug in a little microphone jack in the back, and they put a volume and a mute button on the front, and you can turn up the volume to get more for your headphones. But you're monitoring directly from the mic, and it takes whatever would come from your OBS or your XSplit stream, and it brings that into that mix. So you can still work with it, but it's kind of a kludge if you're doing live streaming. It's great for podcasting and things like that. But before we move on to the real mics, I wanted to kind of expose you to pickup patterns if you haven't really done this kind of stuff. Any of you guys who are worship leaders probably know this, but just for those that are learning to stream for their church service, this is all new, terrifying territory. It doesn't need to be terrifying.
Yeah, and those USB mics, I mean, I know a lot of podcasters, like professional podcasters, who use mics that are just a USB mic. And so I think that as long as you're able to work out the milliseconds delay and that kind of stuff, those are actually really, really decent mics, especially for the money. I mean, obviously, if you're wanting it to sound, like a Bethel live stream, then the Samson mic is, the USB mic is not your option. But if you're just starting out at this and you just need something to capture sound, for a specific thing, it's you and an acoustic guitar, or it's just a teacher preaching, those USB mics can be very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, totally transform the sound that you're getting into your stream.
Yeah, think of it like this. It sounds wide and big because it's omnidirectional, which I'm sure Bruce has already talked about.
Well,
it just feels like you. What's that?
This one's not. This one's cardioid.
Oh no, I'm talking about if you're just using your computer.
Yeah.
And so it goes like this. All of a sudden, it just focuses everything. What this mic does is it'll just focus the sound.
Yeah, great. So down here below here, we've got common polar patterns, and this is basically the pickup pattern of the microphone. And it's called a cardioid, that first one on the left, because it looks like kind of like a heart. If I were to take a microphone like this, trusty SM57, it picks up everything in front of the mic and not very much here in the bottom. So you get these kind of a little bit around there in the low frequencies. And this is great because you could point it at what you want to hear, and it rejects what you don't want to hear. So most microphones that are used in studios for most recording are cardioid microphones, and for live sound especially. But they also go to supercardioid, which is an extended lobe of sensitivity. Not that it's more sensitive, it's just that it's less sensitive to these sides than it would have been otherwise. And usually they do that with baffling inside. And so you tend to get a little bit of sensitivity that comes out the back. You can see that little lobe down there. And then there's an omnidirectional, which basically doesn't matter where I point it, it picks it up from all directions, which is what's in most of these things. And you can have bidirectional, sometimes they're called figure eight, or they're basically, they pick up from both sides, but not from the middles. So those are used a lot of times if you're going to mic a quartet around a mic, or an octet. You'll put 4 people on one side of the mic and 4 people on the other side of the mic, and they'll sing into the mic, and it'll pick them all up evenly, but it will reject sound bouncing off the walls of those first reflections that would come out and muddle that recording. So they're really useful for a lot of things, but they're not useful typically for what you're going to do. And the last thing I wanted to show you there, right past that one, is that little pickup pattern. Well, it's not that these mics are perfect. They're made by men and women, and they're subject to laws of physics and the baffles and stuff that go into them and the way the diaphragms are and respond. What happens is that they're directional in some frequencies better than in other frequencies. So you can see those different colors and those little dashed outlines there. The highs are going to be picking up in one pattern, and the lows are going to be picking up in a different pattern. So the better mics handle this problem better. And so they're going to be more accurate and consistent for off-axis sound. So if I'm miking over here and I'm moving the mic, notice I'm not pointing the mic at me, but if I'm moving a mic and I'm a little bit off-axis, so you've got two people sharing a mic, I'm not losing high frequencies over here on a better mic. I'm still getting those. On a cheaper mic, I'm going to get a little duller as I move off axis of that microphone. So as you're looking at microphones and trying to say, what do I want? Generally, you're going to want a cardioid, and generally you're going to want one that's a little better than a cheap one. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
No, that sounds, that's very, very educational.
Oh, I was educational. Okay, so we're going to move on. I think I got off my little thing here. So I didn't mention this, but you should have a good set of cans. If you're mixing and you don't have monitors and stuff to trust, you should get yourself a good set of headphones. And I don't know what Chris thinks about this, but I've got 4 or 5 different sets of headphones around here, but the ones that I trust and I do studio level mixing on when I need to are Sony MDR 7506s. They're 25 years old, but they sound fantastic. They're clean, clear, articulate, they're open, they're balanced, and they're accurate. They don't give you a hyped bass. Oh yeah, they're really rocking in bass. Like these Sennheiser HD 280 Pros. They're really popular, and kids love them because the bass just kicks out of them. But I don't want to mix off those things because they're lying to me. And the Sonys are really great for having an accurate representation. If you can get a good mix on a pair of Sony headphones, you'll put those through studio monitors and you'll be pretty close. You can get.
Yeah, I've got these ATH M50Xs from Audio Technica, and these are the best headphones that I've ever used, and they're relatively cheap. I think you can get these for less than $100 now. And they are very, very accurate. I typically, because I am mixing in a room that is not perfectly treated. It's got some treatment, but it's not like a perfect studio room. And I do a lot of pro mixing. Then what I'm able to do is I'm able to trust these headphones to get me close, and then I go off of my studio monitors. And I go back and forth between the two, and I'm always checking. So getting a good pair of headphones is absolute something that you need.
Yeah. And these MDRs are $99 too. And so for under $100, you can get several different headphones that people who do mixing, who are engineers, trust. So check that out. Basically, so USB mics we talked about a little bit. The Yeti Pro, the Blue Yeti Pro, is really popular. I would steer clear from it. It actually doesn't sound as good as that little Samson Meteor mic, and it's $200 or so, and it's big and bulky, and I just wouldn't bother with it because it has the same limitations. And the other thing that people do is they tend to get pop filters, and honestly, unless you spit a lot when you talk and you have that mic right in front of you, um, if your mic's right here, then yeah, you need a pop filter because you're going to get plosives. But if you're off slightly aiming at your mic, and your plosives are going past that mic and you're back a little bit, there's no reason to have a pop filter. And it's huge and it's ugly. So if you stick this big pop filter up in front of you on a wide angle lens, because wide angles, remember, when you go wide angles, things that are closer to you on a wide angle lens look huge. Now look, this is 6 inches away from that, and it's bigger than my head. This is how big it really is. So if you put a big pop filter between you and a mic on a webcam, a wide angle lens, it's going to make that thing look really big and cover up most of your face. People, they want to see your face. Even my face, people would rather see than a big black disc. So don't bother with a pop filter unless you're actually tracking vocals and you have a vocalist that is spitting or is going to be so close on that mic and on access that they're going to cause trouble. I track a YouTube artist who has 300,000 followers, and I only put a pop filter there to keep her from going closer than I want her to go, not because she needs a pop filter. You just don't normally need it. So there you go. Okay, so event streaming, we're going to talk about mixers and options. So here's where it starts to get really interesting. I'm going to, the stream that I used to do with the Choral Festival, I used this little Behringer Xenix mixer. And it had a USB out, but I didn't even bother with the USB out because I didn't have time to test if it was really going to be without delays. And a lot of times USB interfaces can't introduce delays. But basically, I brought in the house sound from it was a big, huge, the Holt Center for the Performing Arts is like this world-class theater that had a great, $200,000 soundboard. And there's no way I'm going to get a better mix than that. So I had him give me his sound, and I brought that into this mixer through probably channels 5 and 6. I don't remember, and no one cares. And then I brought in a MC mic into one of the channels, and I brought in some background music, and I took out a feed to record the whole session. And then I took all that and I brought it in through a Art Cleanbox Pro. See it down there between the Touch Mix and the laptop. And that is a level converter. And what happens is when you take a professional level mixer, it has plus 4 dBm powered outputs that are balanced for studio gear to studio gear to studio gear to studio gear. And you take that into the headphone jack of a laptop, which is balanced for a cheap microphone that is a condenser, like electric condenser microphone. That can't always and often can't handle the voltage that's coming out of that professional mixer. And you can overdrive your inputs and get gnarly sound, even though it's not loud enough. And you try to turn it up and it just sounds worse, and you don't know what in the heck's going on. It's because it's getting too much amperage and voltage for what it's able to handle. So this little box takes that professional level signal, turns it into a consumer level minus 20 dBm dB signal, so it won't overdrive that little input jack. They're about $60. That's not the only one available, but it alleviates the or minus 10 dB, sorry, not minus 20. It alleviates that problem of a mismatch of line level signals. So then you get clean input, and you can record either you could record anything coming in off this mixer. I can record anything from the house going into that mixer and then through, or I could set up my own mics and do that feed and bring it through. I could set up a worship band and bring it through there. This little board's cool because it was like $200, and it had 4 channels, had a little compressor on it, which isn't a great compressor, but it's better than nothing. And I've got an EQ for I think it's a semi-parametric, maybe it's just, I don't think it's even semi-parametric, but I've got 3 bands of EQ and I've got effects built in. So I could actually run a small little house concert with 6 players, 5 players and a keyboard or something like that, and some pre-show music. And I can run it all through a little board like that for a couple $100 and bring it into my mix. And then I tell my XSplit or OBS to take that signal and bring it in. Now, the other thing that provides, it provides me 48 volt phantom power. So I get special effects, reverbs and compressors and things like that, and I get 48 volt phantom power. 48 volt phantom power gets you into the realm of some really nice microphones. So like the mic I'm talking right now is a Encore Blue 200, and I got it for a buy one get one free. There were $150 for 2 microphones. They're amazing handheld vocal microphones. So you can get some great mics out there. I would caution you when you get microphones, this is true of everything below probably the $600 range, maybe more, maybe $800 or $1,000 range. If you go buy a guitar, I'll tell you a story. I went and picked out a guitar when I was in high school, and I had a friend who was a great jazz guitar player. I said, hey, come help me. And he said, yeah, I'll come play guitars. And we went into the store, was called the Sun Shop, and there was 25 Takaminis up on the wall that were all identical up on the top. They had 200, 300 guitars in there, but they had 25 of the same. It was a Dreadnought, full steel string guitar. And I liked it, looked nice. We pulled them down off the wall and we played every single one of them. Actually, he played every single one of them while I listened. And of those 25, 3 of them sounded really nice. And 10 of them sounded pretty crappy. And a bunch of them were okay, but those 3 were really nice. And then of those 3, we just focused in and we picked the one that was the best. So when you pick a microphone, because the quality control just isn't like it used to be, and a lot of these things are made in China, and they're going through a production line, and they'll pull one out of 1,000 and say, this one works, and they'll keep them going, right? So when I went in to buy these blue microphones, and I want you to take this to heart because it's true on every type of microphone I've ever purchased, except the Shure SM57s and 58s seem to be the same no matter what you do. You could dunk them in water and they still sound the same. But I said, how many of these do you have? We have 8. I said, bring them out. And I put my Sony headphones on and I hooked it up through a small board, and I went in and I got the $3,500 Taylor guitar off the wall, and I got their best condenser mic and I set it in front of this guitar. And then I played the guitar, and then we switched mics and switched mics and switched mics. And we went through all 8 mics. And of those brand new, never before used mics, 4 of them were garbage. I wouldn't say they're garbage. They still sounded better than this. Okay? But they were $150 mics. They should sound better, right? But 2 of them sounded really good. They sounded as good as or better than the Shure Beta $250 mics. So I bought those for our church, and the other 2 sounded phenomenal. I was like, seriously? This is a handheld vocal mic, and it sounds fantastic. I bought those 2 for me. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. You pick out the best mic you can find, and you audition them with your voice and with a really great acoustic instrument, and if you A/B them, you'll find the mics that sound the best. And when you find that mic, buy that one and leave the losers for somebody else who doesn't care, and they're not going to notice. But you'll have a tool that you can use to record anything the rest of your life. I'm pausing so Chris can say something.
No, I agree with all that. Yeah.
I had to drink something. Okay, so next, another option here is I've got a QSC Touch Mix, and it's fantastic. I have the Touch Mix 16, and oh my gosh, you could get an 8, and it gives you the ability to have tons of effects. They're all great sounding effects, and processing, and like compressors and limiters and gates and beautiful EQs, and there's even a pitch correction for one of your channels. So if you've got a singer that's a little bit not quite always there, you could actually put that on them. And you can mix with an iPad. You can remotely mix the thing through Wi-Fi, and your singers and musicians can control their own headphone mix with their iPhone through a wireless thing, and you can save your mixes. So once you get a good mix, oh, and you can also save all the channels, all the tracks out separately to a USB thumb drive or SSD drive for later post-production mixing on a DAW or something like that. If you wanted to then sweeten it for later, for your big COVID pandemic quarantine release album 4, and then. So that's another thing to look at. If you don't have a board and you're looking at buying a board and you want a board that you can use with a small band, I would highly recommend checking out these little QSC touch mixes. They sound fantastic, and they're just really, really cool boards. And you can then bring that sound out also into your stream. But you can the advantage here mainly is that you can save your setups. So next week, you recall your setup and away you go. You don't have to go through your whole mixing process. You might tweak something because, the guitar player who promised he wouldn't turn it up past 6 has somehow crept it up to 11. But, that kind of thing happens. And then the other thing is that if you don't want to go that route, I also have one of these, it's a Focusrite. I have two. I have Focusrite Scarlett 18i8. It has 8 inputs. 4 of them are XLR 48 volt phantom powered jacks. They're combi jacks, so I can plug a guitar or a mic, but they'll power professional microphones. I can actually do a mix. It's a little bit harder on this because Skype and Zoom, for example, don't listen to more than tracks 1 and 2, channel 1 and 2 out of audio interfaces by default, and maybe not even at all. And I think Zoom only listens to channel 1. So in order to stream and use Zoom or Skype right now, I brought my mic in through channel 1 on my other interface. But you can do a mix and then send that mix to your XSplit or OBS, and you can do your mix here. Now, the advantage of doing this, if you have a fast enough machine to handle things, you can run your I would probably recommend doing it on a separate machine. We talked, Chris, about how you can actually, with OBS and XSplit, you can have secondary machines running processes and then NDI their source into your stream, right?
Sure.
So I would probably run your DAW on this other device and NDI share that, but your DAW would be hooked up to this interface. This interface would pull in all this stuff, and then you can run all your DAW plugins on your stream. All of your favorite reverbs and compressors and pitch correction and everything you want to run, you can do a full mix in your DAW for your live stream and then bring it into your stream. You can't really do that with Skype. You can't really do that with Zoom. You can do it with XSplit and you can do it with OBS, and it's pretty amazing. So if you're looking to make your sound actually sound good, that's a path that can get you there, other than doing the whole pre-record everything and then mix, and then oh my gosh, I've got to edit it all together, and then I've got to edit the whole sermon together and all the announcements and do everything and then post it. And you're basically on this treadmill of production all the time. What I'm talking about here really is a path that lets you save out what you do and then turn it on again, test to make sure you're good to go, start streaming, and when you're done, and you've recorded it to the hard drive for backup, but it's already out there on Twitch saved, and it's already out there on YouTube saved forever, and it's just so much easier. It can take so much less time.
And what you're talking about is really a very basic version of what mega churches are doing. It's what Bethel's doing. It's what Elevation is doing. You're just doing a smaller version of what they're doing, and
less expensive.
And so, yeah, and way less expensive. And it's really unbelievable. Especially if you're using Logic or whatever your DAW of choice is. You can get crazy results. We at a church that I was at that I worked at for a while, we actually figured out how to send we figured out how to send to Logic and then back out without any latency. And the mix that we got, I mean, we were doing replacement of drums. We were doing, I mean, really, really intense stuff.
Sophisticated stuff,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's basically what Bethel and Elevation. We figured out their process and basically used the same processes. And it was unbelievable how good our stream was able to sound. And we didn't do tuning on vocals, but we were able to get verbs and delays and all that kind of stuff. Sound, getting exactly what we wanted. And man, the results of that. And so I've gone to churches and helped them figure out some of this stream stuff, and it's really unbelievable what you can do with one of these one of the, like what he's talking about with the digital mixer with the QSC Touch Mix, or even the smaller Mackie mixers. It really is unbelievable the way that you can shape it. But you cannot be you need a dedicated mixer for. Like, you can't be trying to mix live sound and the stream at the same time. It needs to be someone needs to be dedicated to the stream, and have their own ways of mixing, which I'm sure Bruce has talked about, but you just need to be able.
We haven't talked about that yet, but that's true. That you want to be able to, you can do it all yourself. And if things are consistently simple, you can. Like if it's piano and vocal, or guitar, piano, vocal, you're good, right? You can set that stuff, you can save it, and if you're going to sit in the same place and you're going to sing the same volume levels and stuff. In fact, my wife and daughter and I are going to do a little house concert, and we're going to have a bass player that's been quarantined. He's going to come join us. And we're going to do a little house concert, and we'll set that up, and then I'll go play, and because I'll know that the mix is good and I'm not going to worry about it. So you can get away with simple stuff. But if you're doing a whole big production, no way. You've got to have full attention on whoever's doing the video switching and managing that, and someone who's doing the audio mixing.
Yeah. If you don't want it to sound like a board mix, and you want to be able to have any sort of automation that you can't set up beforehand, it needs to be a dedicated. But if you're doing something simple, like I'm talking about, if you've got a full band on stage, like last night I led worship for a church that is doing their live stream. It's not a live stream. They're doing their stream for Sunday. And I led worship, and we basically filmed and recorded the thing last night. And so obviously you got a full band on stage. There's 10, 12 people on stage. There's 7 cameras and all that kind of stuff. It's a bigger production. You need someone who's dedicated to mixing the live stream. If it's something simple like what Bruce is talking about, then awesome. Set it up, leave it, and forget it.
Hang on, I'm texting Miguel, see if he's ready to join us too. So the other thing that I didn't mention about the touch mix, and it's true of some of the other more sophisticated, newer, I say sophisticated because they really are amazingly sophisticated. In my touch mix 16, and I think even in this thing, just to lesser number of channels, there's about $240,000 worth of effects rack units built into these things. It's insane. It's just insane. And the preamps sound fantastic, and they're just great sounding little devices. And it's the size of a notebook, like a 3-ring binder, right? But the other thing that's in there is they have a bunch of wizards. And if you're new to mixing and you don't have a clue where to start, it's not that these fix everything, because they don't. And it's not that you can just not listen and learn and become a good mixer. You need to do that. But if you don't know where to get started, you can pull up a guitar preset and a bass preset and a female vocal preset and a piano preset and a drum kick preset, and it will get you in the ballpark sounding pretty darn decent right out the gate, and you don't have to even barely know what you're doing. So they've made it simple, they've made it amazingly affordable for what you get, and they sound fantastic. So I would look really seriously hard at one of these little kinds of things. Even if you're just a gigging musician that goes out and plays now and then, and you want to have a tiny little sound system, this little Touch Mix 8 with a couple of, I really like the Yamaha mains that they have, the digital ones. They're sweet sounding on the top end, they're beautiful. But the QSC monitors are great too. mains. You could have a tiny little portable system that would just blow the doors off things, sound quality wise and versatility wise, with one of those things. So think of it as a bigger investment than just your church streaming stuff, if it's you personally footing the bill for this kind of thing.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, and it really is crazy, Bruce. I mean, you know this. I think we've talked about this actually. Is when I started doing this 20 years ago, I've been leading worship and I've been doing this for 20 years, and I remember
You're
my
only
band.
24, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm only 24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but I remember my band buying a portable system, and we spent about $20,000.
Was it a PV?
No, it was a JBL system
Oh,
with a
okay.
Mackie
Yeah,
mixer, like an
yeah,
early digital mixer. This was probably 2003, 2004, and it was great for it could we had enough power to reach maybe 500 or 600 people, relatively well. No effects, no nothing. I mean, it was very, very basic in consideration. And we spent $20,000, and for what we spent $20,000 on now, it would probably cost 1,000
yeah,
or less.
yeah.
I mean, it is
And
really
sound way better.
unbelievable and sound way better. Like what you can buy today in a digital mixer. I mean, I even look at these Behringer mixers. They get poo-pooed by a lot of like pro, quote unquote, pro guys.
Yeah, but
I'd
oh my
use the
gosh.
They're unbelievable. They
Yeah,
are unbelievable how great they are.
yeah,
I mean, yes, if you have the budget to buy a $300,000 mixer, please buy a $300,000 mixer. But the Behringer has everything that a $300,000 mixer 20 years ago would have had.
yeah, yeah. And
And
probably
so I
sounds
think,
better.
and probably sound better, yes.
Yeah,
And so I think that like we just live in this age where, I hear a lot. I work with a lot of churches, and I just go, guys, if you can figure out how to come up with $3,000 to $5,000 in a budget somewhere in the next year, I promise you, you do not have to sound bad. There is so much brilliant equipment that is available today, from XSplit to be able to do live stream stuff to what you can do in your rooms. Most of the churches that I go and visit are churches that are anywhere from 100 to 500 people. As I go and lead worship, and I work with church bands, and I do that sort of thing, and I work with sound guys to help them figure stuff out. And I tell people again and again and again, you do not have to be stuck. I know it feels like it's so scary. This whole world of digital mixing and all this stuff can be so scary. But I promise you, with experts like Bruce and guys like me who have been around the block a few times, that I guarantee you that you can find a solution that is not going to break your church's budget in order to sound decent and even good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can sound great for almost nothing.
Yes.
It's crazy. Um, okay, let me go back to this thing just a little bit. We'll move on to the next thing. I think Miguel's going to call here in a second. So notice that there's two sets of headphones above that little Focusrite interface down there. That interface is low latency. It's a USB 3 interface. The Gen 3 is out now. It's a low latency interface for a DAW, digital audio workstation, which is where you mix and record music. And you'll get very low latency. And I think Miguel's going to call. Hang on one second. And that's what you want, is very low latency if you want to try to use effects and stuff like that. But notice it's got two headphone jacks, two headphones hooked up to it. So I can get a mix for me and a mix for the artist to share. On the touch mix, I think on the Behringer, there's only one headphone or monitor mix, maybe two. But on the touch mix, there's two on the 8, and there's 4 headphone monitor mixes that come out of that. And on the 30 channel one, there's maybe more. So those monitor mixes can be used for in-ears. They can be used for not mains, but monitors. And you can use them for other feeds, for all sorts of other things. But what I wanted you to see also is those little Lewitt LCT 040s. They're $180 for a matched pair. They're a stereo matched pair. So if you want to record a room, they're actually really nice sounding little mics, and they're like $180. It's almost sinful to dangle microphones that sound that good out in front of me. I find this to be a little bit demonic. So we're going to move on. That Lewitt, LCT 440 Pure is a beautiful sounding large diaphragm condenser microphone. It's only $269. And so if you're looking for a large diaphragm condenser microphone for a vocal or for a guitar, what I use for tracking vocals and have for years and love it is I've got a match pair. Matched pair means that someone pulled them off the rack and they listened to them. I'm going to get Miguel in here. Hang on. How do I add you, Miguel? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. He's going to have to try to call again. I don't know how to add him. Do you know how to add a call?
I don't know. If it's cool, I mean, I can jump off and you can add him, man.
Okay, then I might want to cut you back in. I'd rather have you both in now at the same time. I just don't use Skype very much. Uh-oh, I'm feeling dumb all of a sudden. Because it's got me full screen here. Call layout. Float. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he'll call again. I don't know how to initiate a group call. Didn't see. Hang on, let me text him. We should have tested all three of us before, but I didn't do that. I had all sorts of nightmares this morning. Comcast disconnected all my internet connectivity for me. So I was down for the 3 hours of prep time that I needed to finish getting ready for this. Gone. Anyway, for a stereo pair, he'll try again in a minute and then I'll be confused again. For a stereo pair, humans actually grab microphones off the shelf and they match them for volume and frequency response and timbre or character. So the two, when they're used in a XY or to do a stereo pair, they sound more realistic and they image the three-dimensional space better. So I've got a stereo set, match pair of Studio Projects C1s, and they're just amazing sounding microphones. And they were like $300 microphones, but they were competing when they came out with $4,500 U87 microphones, and they still are really nice microphones. So
yep.
you can
I have one of those.
Yeah, you can get some, and there's a kit for those that now updates the internals that I'm thinking about getting. I've got a friend that has a couple of those mics, or he's got 3 of them, I think, in a studio, and he just bought the do-it-yourself kit that upgrades the electronics inside, and he loves it. So it makes them slightly warmer and a little more character-ish, but he just loves it. Now there's one. He's trying. He's trying. Invite more people. Here, I can do this. Now I've got the thing up here. Where is it? Oh, it's Mog, I think. Oh my gosh, what is it, Miguel? What is your Skype name again? It's Mog something. Mog Molina. Why doesn't it show up here more? This is weird because we had a call so that it would work. Yeah, I saw the ad, but now when I click on it, it doesn't let me. All right, let's try this. So there's no ad here. Start call. If I disconnect you, then maybe he can help me. Yeah, that disconnected Chris. Miguel, are you there? There you go.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So I couldn't figure out how to. It disconnected Chris when I tried to get you. I don't see how to add. There was a button that said add, but then it wouldn't give me
Oh, no,
your
well, I,
name.
I created a new group just for the call. Did you see that?
No. Oh, call this group. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, just end this call and then call that group.
Is that working? Did I get anybody?
You got me.
Got Chris.
Looks like you got both
Me
Yep,
of us.
we're
too.
good.
They were good. All right. Sweet. Thank you. That was one of the things I wanted to test and never got around to it. Okay, so I recommend when you do your live streaming, before you go live, you do a couple full test streams. Like go through the whole service. I knew this was going to be kind of low key casual, and that there's likely only one or maybe there's three people watching it, like you and me and these guys. But I'm going to post it later, and other people are going to come back and watch it. So let that be a lesson to you to kind of know what you're doing. Hopefully, this will give you a clue what to test. So, anyway, these mics are fantastic, and you can still pick up Studio Projects mics. The Rode NT1A is a really popular mic for around $250. I find it a little bit hyped on the top end, maybe a little harsh, but people love it, and it's certainly a great mic. So there's some wonderful mics out there, and you can use these great mics when you have a mixer. You're not going to be able to pull them in, or an interface. You're not going to be able to pull them in otherwise. And one last thing on the interface thing before I move on is this is a Scarlett 18i8, so it gives me 8 inputs. There's 4 more quarter-inch jack inputs on the back. But I also have, and it gives me phantom power again, right? But I also have a Focusrite Claret 8 pre, which gives me 8 XLRs with their Air mic pre's, which are even better than these. But these are still great. I was talking to somebody about, you know, it was on the worship. What's the other worship group, Chris? Not worship
Um,
talk or something like that. Worship
worship
leaders.
topics.
Topics, yeah. Somebody was asking about what's a great mic, and somebody said, "Oh, don't worry about the mic. Get a better interface." And it's like, no, no. Even the cheapest interface is better than most $100,000 boards used to have on their mic pre's. And yeah, you could spend $3,000 or $1,000 on a external rack mount microphone preamp, but you'd be better spending $200 more on your microphone. You'll get a better sound out of it. So your bang for the buck is start where the music starts. Capture with the best microphone you can capture acoustic sounds with, and everything else is so good now that you'll be way ahead of the game. So let's move on here. Miguel, I don't know how much of the stream you've watched or anything, but so now we're going to move this over here. So you've basically got kind of an overview of how all the audio all works. What I didn't show you is you can bring in another sound source like a phone for playing before music or something like that here. You can also bring in YouTube stream stuff if you're going to have licensing issues. We can talk about YouTube licensing stuff too, but you can have an MP3 player or something like that of some sort, and you can mix all that in and mix in live stuff, and then save that, and then bring that into your stream into XSplit. So, and by the way, Miguel's not being honest. He's not actually sitting in his office. He's sitting on his couch right now, and I'm sorry to call you out, Miguel, but
It's not a couch. Don't worry. It's worse. It's much worse than that. Way worse.
so as you can do on Zoom and some of the other things, XSplit, and now I'm going to let you talk about the VCam a little bit in a second, but he's using VCam to change his background, and it's really pretty cool, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So anyway, here's the audio overflow or overview. So next, I want to show you some weird things. So you can plug into your computer little USB controller devices, and Elgato makes these, and they're really cool. I've got the Stream Deck. I got there, and I can program all sorts of different buttons, and I actually have, like if I go here for my stream, I have all these different buttons programming pages and pages of buttons, and I can trigger animations and stuff to make people forget how bad of a player I am. I can entertain them with media, and they think, oh wow, what a great stream. And actually, all they've done is watch me die over and over and over again for like 2 or 3 hours. But for all the fun stuff, they think that's cool. Well, you can trigger anything with that. And Elgato makes these things like we talked about lighting before. And if you have a lot of money, this is a way you can go for a desktop, situation where you're just worried about yourself. I wouldn't try to light a big group with this, but just to show you some of the capabilities of how streaming and gaming have kind of merged to give you a smorgasbord of features. These little devices allow you to control scene switches and changes, and they even allow you to control these lighting panels. Like these are little on stand, they clip onto your desk like you can see in the picture, and you can control how bright they are, and just push a button and go to different scene lighting, right? And the other thing you can do with those is you can trigger just complete different look and feel scenes. So you notice I've got these little borders that I just made. Those are just little overlays around our pictures. That's to make it look slightly more professional. When I stream, I think I use for example, when I go live, I've got this. And I usually use a green screen, and my gameplay is in that big black window there, and all of my background goes away, and you can see the game right underneath me like you see on a lot of streams. And I can go to whatever shot I want, but it's all basically, I'm just clicking a button, and I can push a button on this device and it changes them for me. So I don't have to take my hands off the mouse. I can keep doing what I'm doing and reach down with my hand and push a button. So you basically, this is just exactly like what you get when you go into a broadcast television studio. They have switcher controllers that do all this stuff. And you push a button and you go to the 3 up. You push a button and you go to the 2 up. You push a button and you go, it's all done with a button push. So you guys can do that, and it's really easy to do. It's like a push of a button. It takes a little bit to set up your templates like this, and these aren't pretty, and I could have gotten fancy, but I really wanted to just show you the main point of what is possible with that, and that you can control that stuff with these. And I can turn that off, and this blue thing behind is actually a full screen share of an NDI, my wife's iPad Pro. So if I wanted to show that, I can show her iPad Pro. Right now, though, it's downstairs, and she's binge watching some TV show, so you don't get to see that in action, but you could use that for all sorts of things too. So I don't know let's see, what do we got here? Oh, I just dumped Chris' layout of I'll bring it back, Chris. Don't worry. Okay, so that thing that I mentioned that I showed you is about $150. They have a small one that's cheaper. They have a big one that's quite a bit more, and then they have a massive one that you can use. I think Elon Musk bought a few of those to launch SpaceX Starships, and he's testing those right now during the pressure testing. And then they have the iPhone. There's touch apps that emulate being these sorts of devices. So if you can't spring for $150 or $200 for a Stream Deck, you can run an app on your phone for a few bucks and do the same thing. So you can add a lot of automated one-click, one-step. It's a little harder to look down here and find the thing, right, on the interface, and it's just got a name. Whereas these buttons actually can be customized with a photo of what you're going to get when you click on it. Really a cool thing, and I thought you guys would want to know about that. So that is just a plug into your computer. It's a physical or even a virtual device, and that basically then is our video input and screen input and computer input and laptop input device chain. Notice you always want to go hardwired wherever you can, and you might need capture cards for certain devices, things like that. There's our audio input, and then we've already talked about our output leg. And now everything that I showed you at the very beginning of the stream, you understand what it all means. Congratulations, you now know how to get yourself in serious trouble. The only thing I didn't really talk about here is you're going to need patch cables and adapters, and you're going to need mic stands. And I've got numbers here because when I did a live stream on a big festival, that was some of the stuff that I needed. And it takes 4 or 5 hours to make your overlays and things like that you're going to use. And I would make them keeping in mind what you're going to need over and over and over again, so you're not every week having to reinvent that wheel. And you can save all these setups in XSplit so that you just call up. Like normally, I've got my whole streaming setup, and it's a whole different layout. It includes things like if my daughter wants to stream with me, I can have a split screen where she's on top and I'm on the bottom, and you see both of our gameplay and our webcams in real time, and it's all hers is brought across the network, and then it pushes all out to the whole stream. So you could do the same thing with your stuff too. And I just save that, and then when I'm done with this, I'm going to save this, and I'll load up my stream, and I'll get on, I'll kill mechs, and my 3 followers will be thrilled, right? So it's all pretty simple. What else? Anything else here? Yeah. Oh, so I wanted to talk about some other options real quickly, and I want Miguel to talk about XSplit, and I don't know if we've got questions coming in or not, so we'll cross that bridge in a minute. But there are other options we haven't talked about. One of those options is the Sling Studio. Now, Sling Studio is what's known as a streaming appliance. It's an all-in-one box that basically does everything, but you can quickly see that it's not really all-in-one, because you have to add cameras and you have to add ingest conversion or extension devices, and you have to add external storage, and you have to add some sort of display with either an iPad or a Mac or something like that in order to control it. However, that being said, they have a really good quality solution here, and it works really well. I don't think it's as flexible. Miguel, you can probably talk about this. It's not as flexible as XSplit is and varied, but it's very turnkey, cooked and done. So there's less to learn because there's less you can do, but what it does pretty well. I guess there are some people that have some problems with it, and so it's not perfect either. Nothing's really perfect, but it's an option that's out there. Now, you're going to spend a lot more money on it. That's one of the downfalls, is by the time you get any of the cameras that it really works with that are decent, and all of the ingest links and stuff, you're going to be in the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $8,000 range by the time you kit it out with all the cameras that you might want and stuff like that. But just it by itself is what, $1,000 or $1,500 or something like that, and then you need other stuff with it. So, but still, it's something you can look at and you can say, well, yeah, that's perfect for what we need, or no, it's not. Or you might want to start with something, that's more software. The thing about this, I'm going to go back here. The thing about the Sling Studio and the one we're going to look at is they are hardware baked, and they don't do a lot of feature additional enhancements. So kind of what it is what it does, and the upgrades usually fix things that don't work very well. They sometimes will add a little bit of extra functionality. Another option, which is about half the price, is the ATEM Mini Pro. This is from Blackmagic Designs. The advantage to this is it's half the price, and it is really cool. It's great. It's great. But again, it's got those same problems. By the time you get everything going, you're going to be having a lot of money spent. Those 2 little cameras they're showing there that they recommend, of course, are the Pocket Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. And they're about $1,200 or so a piece. The disadvantage there, which we talked about earlier, was that you can't put a autofocus system in front of that sensor on those bodies. They're not autofocus. I would recommend, if you're going to go to a higher end camera body, go to something with good autofocus, face detect at least, or eye detect. But it's a nice little switching device. It basically gives you a hardware XSplit. I've never really wanted to buy one because I have XSplit. So I'm not really sure. It's simple, and if you didn't want to dedicate your computer when you're streaming, it looks like you still kind of have to in order to do the stuff you want to do. So it's great for what it is. Definitely worth looking at. I think you're probably going to end up with XSplit anyway. And then there's this, excuse me, there's like these online little iPhone and iOS driven systems that people have where you pay $39 a month, and they basically let you do one camera and your iPhone, and you can put it on a gimbal, and make your church stream on an iPhone. And the iPhone camera, again, is not that terrible, but I don't know. That seems kind of hinky. If you're paying $75 a month, for heaven's sakes, get yourself a good camera and trick out your system and have a boom and XSplit stream. So that doesn't really appeal to me. And then Jam Kazam is something that's interesting, but I don't think it's really feasible for most people. And it allows, I thought it'd be fun to do a test on this. This is not a streaming platform per se at all. It is a real-time collaborative performance platform. So you can have up to 4 musicians if they have a high-speed internet access with low latency and low latency interface and a fast enough computer with low latency DAW setup. They can all hear and see each other in real time with only about sub 20 millisecond delay, and they can play and jam together, and they all hear each other and they can all play. And you could conceivably capture that if you had a fast enough computer and bring that in as your worship band doing live worship. I don't know if you can do it though, because everybody I've talked to so far said they either haven't been able to get it to work or they don't have the bandwidth to make it work. So I think it's a product whose time hasn't quite come. There's another one called Infinite Audio or Audio Forever or something like that only works on iOS devices, and they're promising the same sort of thing with 4 players. And they're doing a Kickstarter where they want a lifetime license for $200, but I'm on Windows, so who cares, right? So, and notice real quickly, my video right now looks pretty darn good, and I'm on a $50, $70 webcam. So if the lighting is good, you can look good on a stream, but lighting is everything. So there you go. That's all that I'm sure we have time to talk about. We're going to do question and answers now. Before you go, I want to, don't go yet, because we're going to do all sorts of question and answers. I want Miguel to talk. So, and then we'll come back and I'll mention this thing again. Miguel.
Hey, what's up?
Tell us about XSplit, and tell us about VCam, and tell us about how you think churches could leverage that for, or those things for what they do for doing services and stuff like that.
So I've been listening to your entire presentation, and I think you pretty much covered what XSplit and or OBS can do, right? But the cool part about like for example VCam, if you wanted to pull other people who are like using different types of apps, right? VCam lets you use the app in multiple apps at the same time. If you ever had that problem where you just started a Skype call and you didn't realize, I don't know, maybe Zoom was running in the background and it forgot to close your camera, and now you're in a weird situation where you can't actually use your camera and you have to, figure out or actually realize that Zoom's open, and then you close Zoom, maybe even restart Skype, and then you're in a bit of a pickle. With VCam,
every time. It only happened every time.
So okay.
Yeah, not that often.
All right. So with VCam, we made it so that it can be consumed by multiple applications at once. There's still a few kinks in the software, but we're working on it. But basically, I can use this. I can be in a Zoom meeting, a Skype meeting, a Microsoft Teams meeting, all at the same time, just using VCam, and then making VCam consume my C920, which I'm using right now over here. What Bruce said earlier as well. I think you mentioned NDI, right? And you weren't able to demo it.
Yeah, my phone NDI is broken right now because my Wi-Fi is broken.
Because of your Wi-Fi, yeah. So
cut me off at the knees today.
Okay, so the cool part about XSplit Broadcaster, right? Normally, what you'd use in Skype would be VCam, but what I'm actually using right now is I'm using XSplit Broadcaster as my camera. So technically, I can switch to my my phone over here, as you can see. I can switch to this scene. And now I see you guys.
Yeah,
right there.
That was what I was going to do, and I couldn't do it, so I'm glad you're able to show that.
Yep. So I'm using XSplit Broadcaster on Skype, so I can actually do a presentation if I wanted to.
That's a lot of Chris Slays there. You might want to tone that back a little bit.
I mean, we're trying to break the world, right?
That's
so
true. That's right.
Know.
Break the internet.
So yeah, and up here is like my actual thing. So That's how XSplit looks. And I can switch scenes if I wanted to, and it's gonna come back to the first scene or whatever. Of course, if I do that, then this theme will disappear, and I click this, and we're back to myself.
So that was a little transition stinger thing that you ran there too,
Yes,
with one click.
exactly. So you can choose the transition that you want when you're switching scenes. There's also a lot of other features in XSplit that you can use to automate things. So like maybe for some reason, like maybe you have some service that you need to do at a certain time, but no one's available to do it at that time. You can pre-record everything, okay? And you can use something called macros. There's an extension in XSplit called macros. It's kind of impossible to explain in one go, but basically what it does is it allows you to automate actions, and you can pretty much create a 24-hour live stream if you wanted that just starts and stops and switches scenes. Like when a video ends, it switches scenes and it starts an ad here and does that. And as long as you program it correctly, then you can just leave your computer running and leave it for the weekend. And like at a certain time, it's just going to start broadcasting and just show everything in order, completely automated.
So you could, in effect, automate your attendance to a virtual church service, and no one would know you weren't there.
No, that's not what
okay.
it does.
Oh,
It's a
darn.
broadcasting
Okay. All
thing.
right.
It's a broadcasting thing.
All right.
Yeah,
Just checking.
you would still need to. It doesn't automate Skype. It automates the broadcast. It's more of the church automating the stuff, not the not the people.
Oh well. Oh well.
Oh well.
So let me
Got
jump
it.
in here a little bit. When we got together and you were when I talked to you about coming on the stream, and you asked me if I used VCam and stuff, and I had said no because I was having some other troubles with it. And once you showed me that I could use it as basically the root camera that all my other apps draw from, instead of having the different apps fight for control of that camera, they all can say, hey, can I grab some VCam goodness? And I can have multiple programs running, and they're all drawing from the same one camera instead of fighting over it. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so great. So now VCam is my camera for Zoom and for Skype and for XSplit and for anything else that I do that uses a camera. I go through VCam because I know that if something else pops up, it's not going to crash my webcam or crash my application, because it's just going to work. And anything that I do as far as customizing my like you can't do fun backgrounds in some applications, right? But I can do
It's limited sometimes.
Yeah, but I can do fun backgrounds in VCam, and they come through to all my other applications really easily and really instantly. And if you're like a space cadet and you like floating around in the virtual world, then that's perfect. So it's great. So even if everybody who's watching this stream just went and got VCam, your life would be happier, and you should go do that right away. But the other thing that I mentioned earlier is, did you want to say something about VCam?
Oh no. I'm just scratching my face.
The other thing that I mentioned earlier was that for nonprofits like churches, you guys are giving them the premium license to the broadcaster software, right?
Exactly. You just have to reach out to us and say, hey, we're this, and like, of course, like, ideally reach out with an official email so we can verify that you are actually, a nonprofit. But after that, we'll happily give you a 1-year license, a premium license, which unlocks pretty much all the XSplit apps from XSplit Broadcaster, XSplit VCam, and any other apps we might decide to add on top of that at least within the year. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That's so great you guys are doing that. And I know that it's going to get a lot of people hooked. So I want to give a little bit of warning to people that if you start doing this, you're going to have a problem not doing it with XSplit later on.
I like how you're like, setting things on fire. I mean,
Yeah.
mine is like a cartoon.
Yeah,
Really, I can
I'm
just
being
do this.
a little
This is
demonic
fine.
here. I'm letting people
This
know
is-
that there's some evil mojo going on. That XSplit is giving you something worth quite a bit of money for free, so that they can get you hooked on XSplit later on after you're able to, leave your house. But you'll still be hooked
Yeah.
on it, and so they won't care.
the thing with XSplit, right? So if you can't really shell out for a lifetime, which is $200, we do have like subscription plans, which is like $25 for 3 months, $60 for a year, $150 for 3 years. But once you start doing the math, you're just gonna be like, yeah, sure, I'll just get it for 200, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Oh, and just so you understand how messy my background is, okay? Just so you understand, I will turn off my filter completely, and you're gonna see the
I love
mess behind. It is so
That's
horrible.
fantastic.
This is like the worst possible scenario. Like if you tried to use Zoom with this, or maybe Teams or even Skype's background removal, it's not gonna do it well because XSplit uses machine learning and AI models to determine like what needs to be removed. It separates you from the background, whereas the other background removal techniques are based purely off like programmatic, like algorithms, which aren't as effective and will probably destroy your CPU just trying to remove the background. It'll also result in a lower quality. What they actually do when you try to remove the background is they shrink your camera resolution a bit, and then they trim here and there.
Right. They're doing edge detection and that kind of thing mostly.
Yes, all that stuff. And the thing about this technology is it'll only get better as we improve the model. Right now, if I wait, let me just turn this on. If I hold up my phone, right, it's
Yeah.
disappearing.
Right.
We have our next version will actually let you hold your phone. Basically, anything in your hand will be detected. So if you
It's gonna
decide to
follow your
hold,
hand, it's going to trace your arm up to your hand to your
yeah,
fingers to what's in it. That's
yeah, it's
cool.
like it's gonna realize that you're holding onto a phone or you're holding onto a roll of tissue paper because I don't know, people are hoarding tissue paper right now. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do
I,
with
I
XSplit.
want you to know that my office actually, that is my office behind me, and I cleaned it, particularly for this stream. And my wife came up and she said, "Wow, where did you put
Wow.
all that stuff?" And it's just like around behind the, over by the drum kit, kind of behind the laser printer and stuff like that. So uh, I could
Yeah.
show the same pandemonium that you were just brave enough to show. Okay, is there anything that's unique about XSplit versus OBS? Because I know a lot of people, well, OBS is free, so I should use that. And I went down the OBS road initially because it was free, and um, ended up seeing the light and never looked back, and so happy that I did. But
The
why
I
would
think one of the
someone want
biggest,
it?
yeah, one of the biggest differences would be we have 24/7 support because you are paying for the product, then we are kind of responsible to your customer experience. If you do like have issues with OBS, sure you can post on their forums, and hopefully someone will respond. They're very responsive. I know the guys. They're a good
Yeah,
bunch,
they have been
but
very
they're not
responsive.
they're not obligated to fix your problem, whereas we are completely obligated to figure out what's wrong, and we will go as far as debug on your computer, go into a team viewer session, try to figure out what is breaking if it comes down to that.
And you guys also seem to be product development. You seem to be really attuned to what can we do to improve it seems like a faster pace than OBS in some ways. I don't know if that's true or it just
It's
feels that way.
I guess recently we've been faster. There was a time when we were too focused on certain things, but I think since the past 3 years we've like massively improved our processes, and we just know how to prioritize better now. Like if users are asking for something, like if we can see that there's a lot of users wanting a certain feature, then we kind of bump it up on the list and just try to
Yeah.
get, even if it's hard, it's like, okay, we just have to do it.
Yeah. Oh, one of the things I just thought of I haven't mentioned is that for people who are going to be doing churches live streaming, you may notice, like if I'm down here in the corner, Chris and our pictures are really high quality, and Miguel's is kind of a little lower quality, but still pretty decent, and way better than Zoom would have been. And if I go to this, what did I have here? Here, the quality of this, of what's being streamed out, for example, is so much higher quality than a Zoom call is going to give you, right? I think we just lost.
No, I was just like
So it's
fiddling
so much
around
higher
with Beacon.
quality. So you're not going to be able to put out a good quality stream. And realistically, we talked about how important audio is, but video is not unimportant. And keep in mind that people are watching media that is produced on high-end equipment with high-end aesthetics, and you want to not. It's not that you have to compete and be better, but it's you have to compete and not be obviously annoyingly worse. So anything you can do to make yourself look respectable and like you care, I think really helps your stream, and it helps people enjoy your stream more. So you can't do that on Zoom. You can't do that on Skype, really. You have to use a tool like XSplit to make that happen, and XSplit makes it happen really easily. And I'm pushing XSplit because I love it, not because they're not paying me a dime. They're not giving me anything that I didn't pay for myself. And Chris isn't making anything, and Miguel's not making anything. We're all here because we really want to help churches succeed at what they're doing, and we're sharing what knowledge we have and what tools we have and what software we have to make that work for you guys. So I want to have Chris talk a little bit about how to make sound better. Any mixing stuff, tips that you've got, Chris, you want to give us? I also have some ideas I want to kick around for helping churches live stream better. Miguel, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one small Easter egg in XSplit that no one knows. We don't really tell anyone about it because we're still kind of fixing it. You can drag a PowerPoint presentation straight into the mixer of XSplit and it will load correctly. Well, not perfectly, but it will load.
Wow, that's cool.
So if you wanted to have instead of creating an app capture or a screen capture of the PowerPoint, it will become a source in XSplit, the PowerPoint itself.
So you guys should look at ProPresenter and you should look at Easy Worship. They're both media management and presentation programs that are commonly used in churches to do PowerPoint presentations and overheads and slides and lyrics on top of background images for during worship and stuff like that. And one of the questions I see coming up all the time on the forums on the Facebook group is, how do I get my lyrics in? How do I do that? And you can use NDI from either of those to bring them into XSplit, and maybe that's the best way. Or would it be better to have a native ability?
Do they have so those apps have NDI?
They have NDI out, yeah.
Oh, that's perfect because those are already designed. I'm just saying that if in case you needed to drag a PowerPoint presentation for some reason or another.
What I don't know is if whether or not the NDI. I don't know if I haven't used ProPresenter. I used Easy Worship years ago. I don't know if those will send out slides on a transparent background or lyrics on a transparent background. Because I think what people would like to be able to do is have the transparent background lyrics composited over the top of their worship.
If you're gonna do that, just make sure that you can chroma the NDI.
Yeah, they could do it on a green background, couldn't they? And chroma it when it comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Just send it with a green background and you just chroma it out and you're good.
That'd be great. That's a great idea. Okay, Chris, did you want to say stuff about audio at all? Do you want to talk about audio some more?
No, I think we covered everything.
Are there any tips you do when you're mixing for live sound on a stream that you do mix-wise?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about it, but one of the reasons why, if you're mixing a full band, why you don't want to be mixing it from your live situation is because basically the things that are loud in the room will be quiet on the stream, and the things that are quiet in the room will be loud on the stream. And so that's why a lot of times when you watch a church, church's live stream, all you hear are vocals, is because the things that are quiet in the room are the quietest things are the vocals. And so all you hear is vocals, and then the music is this tiny down here. And I think the really important thing is to, again, get a good mix where, you want to make it sound like the drums are sitting right in the right space and the bass and so on and so forth. Mix it as if you're mixing a record, not like you're mixing live sound. And that's really the important thing to process through as you're mixing.
Okay, cool. So
I have a tip regarding that though on XSplit. If you really wanted to make sure that your sound going into the stream is optimal, what you need to do is you need to assign, like maybe plug in a secondary or tertiary audio interface onto your PC and assign that as audio preview. In the settings of XSplit, you can set your audio preview device to like headphones or whatever. And if you do that, whatever you hear there is exactly what people on your stream will hear. So, because like normally what people do is they use that and then, or sorry, they actually preview it on like YouTube or Facebook or wherever they're streaming, and it's delayed. It's like, sometimes it's like too late. Oh crap, our sound was crap. But at least with this one, even before you start hitting that stream button, you can do it just like, okay, guys, speak up, play something, and you'll hear what the stream will hear exactly.
How do you set that up again?
So you can go to settings, like tools, and then settings, and then from there you just select the audio tab, and then there's an audio preview drop down. You can just choose a default device. Obviously, you cannot select your default system sound. If you had like system sound selected, you can't select that because it's gonna just loop into oblivion, because it's also pulling from system sound. But this will allow you, whatever device you have assigned in audio preview will be your final mix for the stream.
Okay.
What we normally do is we set our system sound to none, so it doesn't pick up anything coming from your PC, and then we pull out system sound into the external mixer, or if it's a USB mixer, we'll just push it out there, and then the microphone will be either line in, or if there's a USB interface for the mixer, then we'll use that as the microphone. So you mix everything on the mixer, and then you just have like audio preview to double check. Like you can check on the mixer, but if you really wanted to hear the final output, because like you might have like accidentally muted something on XSplit, like maybe even the mix itself, right? So the mixer itself. So you're going to be
that also gets rid of the problem of, I forgot to mute my Outlook message alert noises.
Exactly. So that's why we disable system sound, so that we can only add the devices that we want, or like the whatever that we want.
Right.
We're working on a feature in the future where, I can't really say much, but it'll remove the problem of random apps popping into the background.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Cool. So the other thing, I broadcast this out on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously so that people could see, oh, look, it's going two places at one time. And I also recommended that they come check it out on Twitch. And the reason I wanted them to come to Twitch, there is chat for YouTube Live. There is chat for Zoom. There is chat for, lots of things. But the chat on Twitch has evolved quite a bit further than these other platforms has. And that's because the gamer industry has just pushed it to do so. So there's games in chat. There's all sorts of moderator tools. There's all sorts of feedback and collaborative, tipping and cheering and icons, and it's like it's a hotbed of incestuous fellowship, basically, in a good way, of people being able to yak. And I think for youth groups in particular, that's a much better place to host a chat, because it's a environment that they've grown up with and they love and they're in and they know, and it's actually a better environment for doing communication type stuff, I think, than Zoom or anything else really provides. So I kind of wanted to mention that. And then I've been thinking, Chris, you've probably been thinking about this a lot too, so you'll probably have some thoughts about this. And Miguel, if you do, please feel free to join in. But I feel like this whole COVID-19 thing is, in some ways, going to be a great sifting of the modern church, and I don't know if that's sifting for the good or sifting for the bad, and or some of both, probably. But I suspect that when people come off of quarantine and can go back to meeting in corporate services where there's dozens and hundreds of people or thousands of people, some people will not go back. And they won't go back because either they're not comfortable yet health wise, or they won't go back because they've gotten comfortable not doing anything. And other people will flock back because they missed that personal fellowship so much that they can hardly wait for. In fact, they're probably sneaking out at night and hanging out in the church parking lot and looking in the windows when no one's looking. They can hardly wait to get back at it. But I just really wonder what the attendance of churches is going to be post lockdown, and I'm afraid it's going to be lower, not higher. And so, if that's true, or even if it's not true, I feel like we should do everything we can as pastors and worship leaders and people who care about those kinds of communities to help connect people to people. And which is another reason why I wanted to do this stream, is I wanted people who are involved in the putting out of a virtual service to see it for more than just a Zoom session, and see it as a way to connect people. So I've got a list of ideas here that I want to talk about that might help to do that better. And before I start diving into that, Chris, is there anything that brings up in your mind that's on your heart, or anything that you've thought about?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. A lot of churches are seeing an increase in attendance via online, and they're seeing an increase in giving. And so I've talked to a couple of people that are high up in church world and in large churches, and they are saying that moving forward, they don't see themselves going back to normal sort of services, that in their minds that yes, they will have services, but so much more is going to be focused online, and so much more is going to be focused on the week. I think, unfortunately, what has happened in the modern American church over the past sort of 30 years of church world is that we have focused everything on Sunday mornings and not a lot on during the week and how we reach our people during the week. And I think that COVID has forced us to be really creative as a church, trying to reach people Monday through Saturday, as opposed to just Sunday mornings at a location. And I think that is only going to continue. I think that the churches who do not figure out how to raise their game in the online space are going to lose out to the churches that do, unfortunately. And so I think that, yes, we are going to see people, I was talking to a pastor of a very large church yesterday, and he said to me that he was like, we've realized how not important our building is. And I said, well, it's both.
That's ironic, isn't it?
It's both important and not important, because I think you're going to see that people want to come back to that space in order to feel the community. But I think that this has shown them that you can be connected to a church and not necessarily have to be in that space to be connected. And I think what I'm finding is that the churches that are doing it really well, they really are outdoing themselves, going after connection Monday through Saturday. And then Sunday just happens to be a thing that is a celebration of what it was supposed to be all along, I think. What I see Sunday morning services being is a celebration of what's happening during the week. But instead, it was the thing. And so people could check this box off a list that says, oh, I went to church.
Yeah.
And that became the thing. And I think that we're going to see, I wouldn't say more real, but a different sort of reaching people where they are.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me, I see people talk about, I love the worship leaders, the worship talk group, or Worship Leaders Plus group, because of all the conversations that happen. That some of them are just wild and crazy and stuff. But it always is interesting to me when people post, what's true worship? How would you define, true, authentic worship? And of course, because we're worship leaders and we deal with music all the time and stuff, that usually is part of their definition. But when I look at Romans chapter 12, where Paul talks about our reasonable service of worship is to present ourselves as living and holy sacrifices, we tend to take that verse as presenting ourselves to God as a living sacrifice and laying down our lives for God. but the whole rest of the chapter is really the definition of what that's talking about. And there, it's clear that Paul's saying that we're to present ourselves as living sacrifices to the people around us, that we're to be laying down our lives for people, and that that is our reasonable, acceptable form of worship. And so when we come together and sing, it's really the icing on the cake, but the cake is baked during the week when we're living and giving our lives to help people and serve people and love people. And if we walk in and just sing icing, it's kind of a sickening thing. And it's not what worship really is all about. Worship's about giving our lives to be Christ in people's lives. So I really resonate with that, what you were saying. Miguel, is there anything you want to add? Or I don't want to leave you out in the sidelines with your jetpack there.
No. It's like I do understand. I think the thing is like because uh, the servicers are like the churches are getting more aware that these technologies exist. As we move towards more online activities, the people who wouldn't normally be able to make it to church are suddenly enabled. We're enabling the people who are stuck at home because they're disabled, or, you know, the reach is just way bigger, and you can cross borders, you can cross countries. You know, there's just
Yeah,
more potential.
yeah,
Because normally churches are localized, but the thing is, you know, there are people sometimes in certain communities they don't feel like they belong, but they would fit better in a community that's like thousands of miles away, but they normally wouldn't be able to get there, maybe not even find them. But now the opportunity is there, and as churches become more aware and how to, I guess, bring the word out to the people, then it's just, yeah, there's just more to go around. There's
yeah,
just more faith. There's more love.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to feel free to riff on this stuff if something comes to mind. These are some things that just kind of trickled through my brain a little bit for when you're preparing your stream services. You don't have a captive audience anymore. You've got people who can easily get up and go to the bathroom, or get more popcorn, or just go chase the cat, right? And so one of the things that I obviously haven't done that on this stream because I figured it would be a protracted stream. I didn't think it would be this protracted, and so I apologize to you guys. I might post this as a multi-part series thing, um, but you want to condense your sermons, make them shorter, and make them the very best. Cut anything that isn't meat, and make them as good and emotionally motivating and communicative and connective as you can. And one of the things I thought would be cool would be to allow, since we have these chat tools that we don't ever use in a church service, because we don't want people using their phones, but they're going to in this case, do a Q&A about the sermon. So after you're done preaching, have someone who's been collecting people's text questions and cull through and say, hey, would you answer this question to our congregation, and let that be part of your sermon, because I think that'd be really interesting for some people, and I think it would allow them to look behind the veil of the sermon itself to what other thoughts you have about it, and I think it would connect them with what you're teaching too, because it allows them to say, hey, this particular thing, that matters to me. Would you answer that? I think that'd be really good. So that's a way to use that technology, and find ways to personalize your stream in every way and opportunity you can. Um, YouTube is a perfect, or streaming is a perfect medium that for churches that have kids that do like puppet stuff. That's still a thing in some churches. They do like puppet Sunday school puppet shows and stuff. Oh my gosh, you could actually it'd feel like the Muppets, and you could just do it because you have a camera that makes it seem more magically real, because it clips off everything else in the room, and suddenly those critters become more alive. So use those sorts of storytelling things with kids, and you can do stuff with, like, to me it seems like churches are probably, now maybe this isn't true for most, but I think the majority of smaller churches, they're just happy to get through the one service, and they're not thinking about, oh, wait a minute, what have we done for our kids, What have we done for our youth?
Mm-hmm.
What have we done that reaches out to our singles or young marrieds and stuff, or the elderly? Have we gone around and made sure that they all have connection and they can even get our virtual service? I know some churches actually sent people in and they disinfected and they got them computers or hooked up computers and hooked up webcams so they could do Zoom and stuff. So you might need some extra steps to make that happen. But with kids, you could do like group scavenger hunts in their home, or do like bingo game things in their home that are part of your lesson, that get them running around doing things that are fun. And you could have multiple channels. You can push out 3 different services from your church. You can push out a youth service and an adult service and a
Mm-hmm.
kids service, so that you could do your main service and then say, okay, kids, go get on your iPad to your your youth channel, and boom, off they go, right? And you can do stuff that's tailored to what they're interested in, that makes a stronger connection between them. I'm all for having youth in with adults. I think that's important. I think it's important for them to be around older people and old people. And family is a healthy church if it's a family church. So I'm not saying in any way to get rid of that, but I also don't mind targeting specific connection points between different groups and people and stuff. Um, uh, I think it'd be my wife does this. She does a children's choir rehearsal, and they're doing them online right now. And I kind of help her with it a little bit technically. And one of the things that she started doing is she has a guest surprise guest join the Zoom meeting, and they're famous. They're like one of them is going to be Peter Hollins, who has like 3 million YouTube fans, and he does vocal a cappella performance stuff, and he's amazing. And he's going to come in and he's going to sing a song for them, and then he's going to just chat with them for a little while. And they would never get to meet him in person, and he's going to come to their rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them's going to be his somebody else who's like got 300,000 followers on YouTube, and one's an opera singer who makes $5,000 for singing at a big opera hall, and she's amazing and a kind of world-class opera singer. So getting people who you would never necessarily think about getting involved to say, hey, come be part of our church service for 5 minutes, would be a really cool thing to connect people that you'd never make that connection with any other way. It amazes me that now maybe they're doing this again. I don't go out and research. I think it was Chris. Was it you, or was it? Maybe it was somebody else was doing a paper on streaming in churches and stuff.
Not me.
Okay, so he's been watching lots and lots of services, so he would probably know this. I don't. I think that it's crazy to me if, because I was a youth pastor, so I'm a little bit biased in that. I was a youth pastor for years. It's crazy to me if after a service, or first of all, if the youth pastor doesn't do his youth group meeting in Twitch, is crazy, because they're already in Twitch. That's where they are. You should go where they are and do it where they are. And it's crazy to me that after the meeting, they don't hang out in Twitch and then game together in Twitch, because that's where they are and that's what they're doing. And it's a great excuse and a great avenue for a youth pastor to be connected on a more personal, one-to-one level with all of his youth kids, because they're all there. And it's just like, I remember parents saying, hey, you need to go out and play basketball with my son because he only likes basketball. And it's like, well, no, I don't need to play basketball, but I do need to do something with him. And so if it's not basketball, then it's going to be sailing or something else he'll enjoy doing, so I can spend some one-on-one time. And so these technological platforms allow us to open those channels in specific ways that we couldn't do before, and that we can't do the other ways now anyway. So that's just another thing. I think, man, I hope that youth pastors are taking advantage of those opportunities and hanging out, streaming, and gaming with their youth kids. And I think having people share stories. So, Chris, you were talking about people doing more during the week, right? And being more active and living their faith out. I think it'd be great as part of a church service to have like a 5 minute of 2 people sharing, this is what we did this week in our world and how God used it in us. Maybe he didn't even use it in anybody else, or maybe they helped somebody, but they don't know if it helped them or not, or don't care, but they know what it did for them and they know what they did, right? And sharing, letting the congregation come through the other direction on our YouTube streams, so it's not just the church spitting out content, but it's the church inviting the church to be the content. And I think that's really a kind of a paradigm shift that we need to take to make our streams more connective to the people and stuff. And we'll lose them if we don't fully engage them. We need to more fully engage them. We need, and also things like hanging out, playing mini golf together. Like, does pastors love to golf, right? That's the big joke. They always love to golf. It's all they do. They just golf. Well, they can't go golfing evidently because everything's closed. They can't even go to the beach. But they could mini golf, and they could mini golf with 8 different people at a time, right? And they could hang out with, people in their church mini golfing online and chat and laugh and have a good time. And they could bond a relationship that they're not able to build sometimes any other ways. Having a text prayer request for people, say, hey, would you pray for me for this? That's anonymous. It goes to an anonymous number. Somebody gives those to the person who's running the service, and that Sunday they say, hey, we've got somebody who needs this, or this is their problem. We need people to pray for these specific things, so that you're getting more feedback coming back through. And then I think also I had one that was like, pastors spend, okay, this depends on the pastor, I suppose, but on average, a pastor spends 6 to 8 hours prepping, sometimes 12, for every time they do a sermon. I know I spent 4 to 6 or 8 doing that routinely when I was preaching or teaching. And I think it'd be really cool, and if I was teaching now or preaching now, I would set up study hours where I'm on Zoom or just on XSplit with a Zoom pulled in or whatever, and I would let people come into that study session. And as I'm reading and studying and making notes and typing my notes, I'd let them know what I'm studying, and I'd put it on there, and I'd let them see the notes develop, and I'd let them ask questions, and we could dialogue about things that come up. And so anybody who's interested in studying the Bible more could hang out with the pastor while he's studying, or the kids could hang out with the youth pastor while he's studying, and let them see behind the door how that happens and what things go into it and stuff. And I think it would open up dialogue that pastors have never been able to have with their parishioners before, just by saying, hey, door's open, you can come in, and I'm going to study, and you can study with me, and if you want help studying, I can take a break and do that too, and stuff like that. So I think that there's so many, and obviously I don't have all the best answers. Those are just things that kind of came to mind, and I'm sure there's thousands of other better ideas out there. But I want to encourage anybody who's watching this, think of things that you can do to bring the communication back towards you and make connections between people in your congregation and stuff. Go ahead, Chris, you're nodding your head like something.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I agree with all that. I have to get off in about 8 minutes. So I don't know if we want to do some questions from, I don't know if there's viewers that are watching that want to ask questions or something like that, but
let me go check real quickly. Yeah, I don't see any that are put in the chat here. So I'm going to say no, and I'll check the post in. I think a lot of the questions that I've seen people asking. Here's someone, oh my gosh. Someone asked 3 hours ago, have a question, does your church do live stream? And if so, how do you go about it, and is it free? We've only been talking about it for like the last 3 hours. I will send her to this when I post this. I don't know where my original post is that has, I said you could put comments down in there. I'm just going to assume that not hardly anybody watched this, and that I'm going to post it. I'm going to repost it up where people can watch it at their leisure. And I'm going to break it into sections so it's not like killer. So
actually, that part is important, like watching at your leisure. Like because some people aren't able to make it to service on time. Maybe something happened, and being able to just, oh, it's like I made it. I can watch it from start to end.
Oh, for
And
church,
then,
for church services and stuff.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
video on demand is like excellent, and yeah, just having that feedback loop. I love how basically it forces pastors to be more efficient with their sermons, which is actually very good. How do you get a point across in like just a bullseye, and then have the Q&A after people didn't understand it, thresh it out even more, and then that process where you said while you're studying, while you're preparing for a service, allow people to come in, and who knows, maybe some people might bring something up that is relevant to them, and then it hits you like, oh, this is relevant to people, so I should tweak this a bit, I should look more into this, and you might end up with a sermon that's just more apt for your audience at any given time. And I think it's wonderful having that discourse with people, just making you more available to the people, and in a way everyone's just closer to God in that sense.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna say we're done, and I want to thank you guys for coming. Chris, I don't know. I know when people start this kind of thing, there's always a learning curve and stuff, and
Definitely.
even if you know everything about the stuff like I've covered a swath of information here, and I wasn't trying to give people a specific click this button, click that dialogue, and pull that drop down. I was trying to give people a bird's eye overview with enough detail that they could say, oh, that's me. I need these pieces to go together. So you could then go back and say that that's going to work for you with some confidence that you're going the right direction in what you're setting up. But my question, Chris, is how long does it really take, learning curve wise, to learn enough to improve what you're already doing?
I mean, if you've got the right tools, improvement should happen immediately. I mean, especially if you're moving from a board mix to a dedicated live stream mix with a digital mixer, like one of the ones that we talked about, it'll be a marked difference immediately. Now, as far as like getting it to the place where it sounds really, really good, that takes time. I mean, I remember when I first started mixing live stream, I mean, there's just so many things that you have to, figure out. Like, one of the things that it took just trial and error for us was realizing that a room mic, in addition to all of the close mics, made the church service sound alive. Like when everything's really, really close, and so we ended up putting a couple of stereo mics back at the board.
Just to pick up the ambient room worship. And
correct. And that's where we would get the congregational singing, which, again, you don't really realize you miss until it's not there,
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's little things like that, knowing that stereo mics make a huge deal from somewhere, and it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive mics. It could be those two cheap, small mics. You just put them, back pointed towards the stage, and you can even put them on stage facing the audience if they're high enough. That makes a huge difference. I think too, like understanding, how to get the EQs right, understanding that with vocal, most vocal mics are going to have a proximity effect. And so you want to cut, especially in a mix, in what's going to be considered more of a studio mix. You want to cut those mics at about, 150 to 200, so that proximity effect is not, you don't have all this booming bass, or at least have a shelf that's cutting off that stuff. It's little things like that you just sort of learn by trial and error, and mixing a live music is very, very different than mixing a live stream. And I think that some people just go, well, I've mixed, on my board for 15 years. I'm sure I can do a live stream. And you're like, well, I mean, maybe, but most likely there's going to be some trial and error of figuring out, oh man, it just sounds really muddy. Why does it sound muddy? Oh, it's because I have 8 vocalists who are all singing this close on their mic, and they're getting in excess of 240 to 280 that's just murdering your soul. And so same thing with bass, understanding how to, get, you want to leave. It's just making space in the
There's
mix,
lots of
and
little
it's just
things, yeah.
little things. Yeah.
So learning to be an artistic and accomplished mixer engineer is another skill set that if you already have, you're ahead. You'll learn that learning curve for translating that to a live sound much faster. Obviously, if you're starting from zero on that, you've got a steeper hill. As far as the learning of the XSplit and setting all this stuff up, you could have a stream like what I have just done, which is very simple with some basic screens, and you could have just a couple different screens, and you could set that up in a couple hours, and get familiar with it, and then just do a test broadcast, and be getting more familiar with it for a couple weeks, and then do a full. You can add things as you get more familiar, and then go do a full run through. And if it works out great and you're comfortable, then go ahead and start broadcasting that well.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not talking months, you're talking hours, and some dedicated hours, 8, 10, 12 hours, and you'll feel really comfortable, and you'll be able to do everything that you can't imagine you could have done. And
Yep.
you'll be, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not doing this before, haven't been doing this before. So don't be discouraged. There's some learning curve, but don't feel like it's insurmountable, because it's really not. And a lot of people are around to help and love to help and stuff like that. So you can lean on people. So, okay, I think that's it. Thanks so much, you guys, for being here and adding your expertise and your hearts and your thoughts. And I really appreciate it. And I value your time a lot. And I hope that people are able to learn as much as they can from this.
All right, guys. Thanks
Awesome.
so much.
Yeah,
All right, guys.
Great night. Bye-bye.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. All right, so that's going to be the end, basically. I'll post this and probably put it in sections. It'll be up on YouTube right now, but it's a long stream, obviously, and I don't think YouTube's going to let me do all that. So I'll cut it up and repost it in sections. If you have questions, feel free to ask them down below in the comment section, and I'll try to answer those as best I can. You can always hit me up with questions on the Worship Leaders Plus Facebook group, of which I'm a member, and happy to help people there. And I'm going to just do one more thing, and that is I want to make sure that you don't forget to run to XSplit and download their software, because you're going to love what it can do for you. It is so cool. And there's really no reason not to be using it, because of all the things it brings and can bring for you. So go do that. It's xsplit.com. And then the other thing is, I don't want you to forget. Oh, I don't know if I have a slide that gives me the one thing that I want. This will work, but Gail's still on there, but that's fine too. I want to remind you guys to go get this free music. You may not like any of those songs, but I'll bet you do. I'll bet you like a lot of them. We've had people that have just really, really loved these songs. One of the songs that isn't on here that I'm going to put up soon, because I'm getting an arrangement of, I have old recordings of these, so you can hear them with piano vocal from a long, long time ago. And they were just in our living room. They're nothing fancy, so I'm not going to get you all excited there. In fact, I'm going to let you know how bad the recordings are, so when you hear them, you'll go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and then you'll like the song better. But churches of all sizes have loved these songs, and I think your church is going to love them too. So give them a listen. Feel free to use the code and download them. And please just report them on CCLI if you use them. Also, if you're using them and worried about copyright strikes, we don't go policing our songs for copyright infringement. If you do a cover of it, that we're totally happy for that. And if you report it to CCLI, anything we report to YouTube would be just a ownership notice, so that we would get a couple cents if there's any advertising. So there's not money involved here, really, so to speak. I did have an interesting conversation with CCLI last month where we'd gotten a pretty sizable royalty check. We get royalty checks from all of these songs, but not a whole lot, because we're the world's smallest publisher, and You know, it takes a while to get known, and we don't really market or anything like that, so it's all word of mouth. But one of our songs had evidently started doing pretty well, and we got this pretty big check, and it was like, this doesn't seem right. So I called and I said, hey, what's the deal? And they said, oh yeah, you're getting like a lot of reports. And I said, well, are you sure it's not somebody else's song that maybe has our name mixed up, and this money doesn't belong to somebody else, and maybe we shouldn't just give it back? And they said, no, it isn't. Are these your lyrics? And I said, yeah. And they said, yeah, that's you. I said, wow. So we were like thrilled because it was quite a bit of money. But what was funny about it is it's one that is in one of our children's musicals that has some congregational worship in it too. And we've never promoted that song at all. It's just been in that one musical. It's only been done a few times at few big churches, and we don't even have it up on our website for sale. It's a great little musical, but we just haven't ever gotten around to putting it up for sale. Our Christmas musical we sell all over the world. But how would anybody find this? So somehow it had kind of gotten out in the wild, and people were passing it around and starting to use it and report it, and we were starting to make a pretty good chunk of money off of it. And I said, well, like, how well is that doing? And the person I was talking to said, well, let me look. And they said, well, there's like, you know, several hundred churches that are using it this last reporting period, and it's actually doing better than 95% of all the worship songs on CCLI reporting wise, better than some of the Chris Tomlin songs. And I said, what? I was totally blown away. So that song is not in this pack, but it's really similar to the songs in this pack. And I'll be putting that song out, and it'll be probably after the pandemic closures are over, so I can get the guy that I'm doing the arranging stuff with over here. But until that song is available to you, I want you to have these, and I want to give them to you. I don't care if I make any money off them. I just want you to try them out. If you like them, you're going to like them a lot, and I think you'll love them. So don't forget to go do that, and we'll see you in the groups. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you. I want to talk to you after this call.
All right.
After this stream.
Yeah,
All right.
I'll shut this down in a second here.